City Council this week to order. And with that, we're going to start with an invocation, and bringing that today is Sean Vokes from Hillside Christian Church. Thank you for being here, Sean.
Sure. All right, let's pray. God, thank you for today, and thank you for our city leaders. I'm thankful for our mayor and for our council and for all the city employees. God, I am thankful that you've called them to leadership in this season of life. I pray for your blessing on their lives, their health, and their families. I pray today for wisdom to navigate difficult decisions, and I pray for unity in the decisions that are made. God, I pray for your blessing on our city today, and that we'd be attentive and honoring of you for all of us and for your will for each of us. It's in Christ's name I pray. Amen. You're welcome.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dr. Blackwell, if you want to join us up here, that would be great. Yeah, just walk around. Perfect. Yes, that works great. I think that's fantastic. One of the proclamations, we have two today, and one is for National Chiropractic Health Month. Whereas the opioid crisis continues to take a toll on the health and lives of millions of Americans and has worsened in some communities during the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, as many as 1 in 4 patients who receive prescription opioids long-term for non-cancer pain struggles with addiction, and from 1999 to 2020, more than 260,000 people died in the U.S. from overdoses involving prescription opioids. Whereas the American College of Physicians released updated low back pain treatment guidelines in 2017 that promote the use of non-invasive, non-drug approaches such as spinal manipulation as a first-line defense of back pain before the use of pain medications and surgery. And whereas the CDC in its draft 2022 prescribing guidelines also promotes diverse approaches and varied pain management solutions, specifically encourages use of non-drug therapies as a first line of treatment for subacute and chronic pain, and even some types of acute pain. Whereas there's a growing body of research supporting the early use of chiropractic spinal manipulation in helping patients with chronic low back pain to reduce or eliminate their need later for prescription opioid pain medications and surgery. And now, therefore, we, the mayor and city council members of the city of Amarillo, Texas, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2022 as National Chiropractic Health Month in Amarillo, and we officially join with the American Chiropractic Association as it promotes the non-drug treatments that can help lessen or eliminate the need for riskier potential addictive treatment with its Chiropractic on the Front Line for Pain campaign. And here to help us celebrate that is Dr. John Blackwell. Dr. Blackwell, would you like to make a comment?
I just want to thank Mayor Nelson as well as the council and the city of Amarillo for recognizing chiropractic. I represent I'm Texas Chiropractic Association, our district, which represents the Texas Panhandle. So on behalf of myself, as well as all the chiropractors, both in Amarillo as well as our area, we're very thankful for this, especially to our patients. You know, our patients are really why we do what we do, and it's an honor to serve the citizens of Amarillo as well as the surrounding area, being that we're a hub for a lot of health care, both medically as well as from a chiropractic standpoint, and being able to help people live their best life, which is what any of us desire. So very thankful, and hope we have a great month and enjoy that. So thank you so much again.
Thank you. Do you mind taking one with his two on? Thank you.
Judge Whittle, you want to come up here and help me as I present this proclamation? So this is a proclamation for Ryan Palmer Day, which is very fitting that we do this. Whereas professional golfer and Amarillo native Ryan Palmer graduated from Amarillo High School in 1994, and whereas Mr. Palmer graduated from Texas A&M University in 2000, and while at Texas A&M, Mr. Palmer was a three-time All-Big 12 team selection, and whereas since joining the Professional Golfers Association Tour in 2002, Mr. Palmer has played in 465 tournaments across the world and has won 4 times. And whereas Mr. Palmer and his family established the Ryan Palmer Foundation in 2003 to create life-changing and brighter futures for communities and underserved families by offering access to education, self-care, and personal development. And whereas the Texas Golf Hall of Fame has chosen to induct Ryan Palmer into its organization as the Class of 2022 Professional Player at its 2022 Gathering of Eagles and Induction Dinner in San Antonio on October 17th, 2022. Now, therefore, we, Mayor and City Council members of the City of Amarillo, do hereby proclaim October 17th, 2022 as Ryan Palmer Day in Amarillo and congratulate Mr. Palmer on his outstanding achievement given under our hands and seal of office this 11th day of October, City Council and the Mayor.
I'm wearing the Ryan Palmer Foundation cap, and it's his honor, but I've known Ryan since he was a teenager, one of the nicest guys around, not only a very dang good golfer compared to me, but anybody'd be better than me, but what he gives back to the community, not only here, but also back in Colleyville area where he lives right now. So it's going to be my pleasure. I know our Mayor Pro Tem, Frida Powell, will be down there to deliver it to him on Monday, after the golf tournament, and where we open a show of the statues and everything. So I'll be there too. I always vote for him every year because I'm a voting member of the Texas Golf Hall of Fame, and I wanted to get this day for him because I think it's great. He found out about it on September 27th. I announced it to his foundation watch party for the Giants and the Cowboys, and he was totally surprised and honored. So the Mayor Pro Tem, Frida Powell, and I'll be down there, and also I've got a flag for him from Representative John Smithy. So I'm very proud of Ryan Palmer, glad to call him a person I really like, and also glad to call him a friend. Thank you, Amarillo, for helping out.
Okay, we are going to go ahead and move down into agenda item number 1. We don't have anyone signed up today for public address. We're going to come back to the announcement about Director of Finance. So agenda item 1A is to review the agenda items for the regular meeting and attachments. Is there anything, council, that you needed right up front, more information on? Anything missing out of your packets? Not hearing anything. Item 1B is to discuss an invitation from Dnipro, Ukraine, and I'm sure that, Glenda, you can help me pronounce that more properly, and consider creating a possible sister city relationship. And so we have Glenda Moore, who is with Kind House Ukraine Bakery, here to make a presentation on this item. Glenda, welcome. And feel free to introduce your guests that are here with you when you're ready, on your time frame.
Nope. Can you start it? Yes. Can you make it into a slide? There you go. Oh, there we go. Thank you so much. I'm Glenda Moore. I'm from Kind House Ukraine Bakery, and I am the executive director and the founder of Kind House Ukraine Bakery. And what we have been doing for the last 8 years is providing humanitarian aid to Ukraine. There's an area of Ukraine that has been at war since 2014. It is in the Donbass area. And what we have done is we've provided for the heat for those homes and for medical supplies for those people who live on that little strip of land, which we call the buffer zone. Okay, and so what we did is I went to Ukraine in 2013, and I met Dmitry Pashenko, and he is my partner with Kind House Ukraine Bakery, and what he does is he has bought the coal for those people, helped be instrumental in delivering humanitarian aid supplies to them. Well, as you know, in February of this year, there occurred another strike from Russia. And whenever that happened, we had to kind of change our course. So besides just providing for humanitarian aid in eastern Ukraine, we started to do rescue missions. Does this work for me? Do we know?
Possibly. Give it a try.
Let's try. Oh, good. So I actually did not know how to bake, by the way. I came home from Ukraine. I had fallen in love with them in 2013. I had been to a youth camp there. I have been working for AISD for 20 years as a teacher, and I went there to help with the orphanage in the summertime there. I'm going to just go back one. And so I was working on an educational realm, and working with the orphans there, and working actually in the springtime we would go and we would work with teachers there as well. Then I asked my mother to help me to figure out what I could do to help Ukraine, and she taught me to bake. This is my mother, and she passed away in January of this year. But Kind House is something that came from her heart, something that she would have wanted. She went with me many times to Ukraine, and we explored the different parts of Ukraine, all of the beautiful museums and the beautiful art there. So Ukraine is something that has become a part of my heart and a part of my world. At this moment, if you are Ukrainian, would you stand up? You might not like this, but they're very shy. This is Tatiana Vasilyeva. She is a nephrologist here in Amarillo, and she has been instrumental in helping us with medical supplies from donors from BSA, Northwest, and as well as Lubbock, all the way to Dnipro and Kyiv, Ukraine. This is my friend Irina and my friend Toma. And so these are my fellow Ukrainian friends, and we have many more. And so they come together every couple of Saturdays, and they start working on the boxes that have been donated from the local hospitals. And they repackage them, and they label them, and they do everything we can so that we can get them to Dnipro, Ukraine. And so without them, we would not be able to do what we do now. So I'm super grateful to them. Tatiana is from Dnipro, and so if I do anything to mistakenly say something later on, she'll gently say, "Now, Glenda, that fact was wrong." She'll fix me. So thank you guys for coming today. I'm so grateful. So Kind House got started because my mom taught me to bake. And what we did is we started baking cinnamon rolls. It was a very simple recipe. And what we did is we offered those to the public. We operate under currently the Texas Cottage Food Law. And so those items are offered free to the public. People can come and they donate whatever they want to give for those supplies. We never have charged anything, and we never will. People come and put flour and sugar and butter and eggs on our porch. 98% of the things that we bake are baked from the things that were already donated. And it started with Amarillo. Amarillo is a well-known place that is very generous and that wants to help other people. They're open-minded. I want to tell you also about Ukrainians. Ukrainians do not want our pity. They do not want us to throw money at them. They are proud people. They are not someone who wants us to pet them, okay? They want to enter into a friendship with us, and not a friendship that is financial. Anything that is coming from financially is coming from our nonprofit. It is not coming from a friendship with the city. Our friendship with Dnipro, Ukraine would mean that we would offer our art in Amarillo to them, and they would offer their art to us. We would enter into a cultural agreement so that we could broaden our horizons and learn what it is that Ukraine is all about. Although they have been at war for the last 7.5 months, they are proud people. I want to tell you that when my husband and I visited Ukraine 1 month ago, we were shocked to find what we found. We drove past Irpin and Bucha, and there, the destroyed objects, right next to them, they were erecting new buildings. They were repairing their roads as quickly as possible. This is a map of the missiles that went off on February 24th. As you know, yesterday, 84 missiles went off again. 43 of them were shot down because Ukrainians are thriving and they are fighting back for their freedom. This is Dmitry Pashenko and his wife Anya on the right. This is Andrei Belakonya on the left. Dmitry is my partner with Kind House Ukraine. He and his wife work with refugees. They rescue them every day. They send out 7 men every day on rescue missions and bring them back to either Dnipro, Zaporozhye, Kyiv, or even to the west. This is the day after, in Kyiv, this is the day after February 24th. This is the city, these are the cars leaving the city. My husband and I visited Kyiv just 3 weeks ago, and when we did, you would be surprised to know how many people have returned and they are fighting for their city. And yes, there are some roadblocks that you're having to go over because they're doing repairs, but oh my goodness, the millions of people that live here. This was once a city of 7 million people. It's still millions of people there now because they want their city and their country to thrive and to become what it was once again. This is my mother and my grandmother who taught her to bake, so she is still with us today. My mother and my grandmother, if they were still alive today, I would want them to know about the thousands of lives that they have saved in Ukraine because they were willing to teach me to bake. And I didn't even know how. I was that spoiled, rotten kid that ate bologna sandwiches and would not make and eat anything that my mother did. But we had some faith, and we had some backing from Amarillo. It started with Amarillo. The seeds of the people in Amarillo are giving and loving and kind and generous. And you know what? They're respectful, too. They understand that we have to stand up again and again, and we do have to have courage over comfort. This is Alexander. He is the second person that received coal from us in the very beginning when we were founded. He did not want us to take his picture. He thought that we would make fun of him. He, unfortunately for him, was raised in a place that sometimes people were not particularly kind. He has some mental disabilities. When we were able to explain to him that we were providing coal for him and we wanted to make sure that he stood proud and confident, then he would let us take his picture. Without the baked goods and without Amarillo and without our partnership, we couldn't have done these things. And we're so glad that we get to do them. These are the packages that we've sent. We've sent well over 200 packages to Ukraine filled with medical supplies. One of the medical objects that we sent was to Kyiv, Ukraine, to an ophthalmology clinic. It was $10,000. And it was very hard to send because it was a very delicate piece of equipment. But we celebrated when it got there. It was awesome. And that was done through Kind House Ukraine Bakery, through our nonprofit. If we become sister cities with Ukraine, that does not incur us financially with them. It does mean that we will provide them with some hope, that we know that they are going to stand and fight, and we do know that they are going to continue. Kind House Ukraine Bakery plans on opening not just our storefront here in Amarillo within the next month. We also have plans to open one in Kyiv and one in Dnipro, Ukraine, because we want them to be able to provide for themselves as well. This is a dream that we want to have, and this is something that we invite Amarillo to do with us. This will benefit Kind House Ukraine Bakery. It will help us to be able to expand our horizons and to be able to know them. But more than anything, I have a daughter, and she is 19 years old. She goes to Amarillo College. Actually, she just finished there, and she's about to head off to WT. And I have always wanted for both my daughters to expand their horizons and for them to know all of the different places culturally that they can be a part of. And I think Amarillo can be a part of that too. A cultural and business exchange would benefit us both, would help us to see all of the different avenues that other countries and other places go through to be able to not just survive, but to be able to stand up and to rebuild and do what they need to. We're not perfect here in Amarillo. There are some things that we need to take care of, obviously. But you know what? We are those types of people that we pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. And we want to pass that on to Ukraine too. That so many times when different hardships have come on us, tornadoes, things that have destroyed crops, things that have done not well for Amarillo, we have kept on going and we have survived. And they have that to teach us as well. So we invite you from our wonderful mayor in Dnipro, Ukraine. The D is silent, Mayor Nelson.
Thank
So
you
we
for the
say,
help on that, yes.
Dnipro, Ukraine. Boris Vilov. Oh, I'm going to say his name wrong. Tatiana, say it.
The mayor of Dnipro is Boris Filatov.
Filato.
Wonderful man who has again and again thanked us and has talked to Tatiana on the phone and said thank you for the supplies that you've sent Dnipro, Ukraine. Thank you for caring about us. And let us enter a friendship with each other. And that does not tie us financially. That means that we really have an exchange of culture, an exchange of love, exchange of friendship with them. So let us consider something like this. Let us consider what we can do. The thing that you need to know, if you go to sistercities.org, you will see that there is actually other cities that are friends with cities in Ukraine. And what you do as a city council is you would add your own agenda items that would detail exactly what it meant in order for you to become a sister city. So you would get to be the ones that have the voice in that. And you would say, this is exactly what it means. And it would become somewhat of a exchange between us and them. We would send that back and forth to the mayor of Dnipro until we all came to an agreement of what that looked like. It's not something that happens on the spot and spur of the moment. We don't just throw it to the wind. We make sure that we manage that and make sure that we know exactly what that means for us and for Amarillo. And we want to make sure that we would benefit from it. That's something that we want from our hearts. It's something that we want to be able to make sure that we're doing the very best, not just for Dnipro, Ukraine, but for ourselves as well. As we open up our storefront in this next month, I would invite each one of you to come and visit the store, because on the walls you will see the pictures of the people that we have helped, and you will meet the volunteers of Amarillo and the people in Amarillo who have poured themselves into this bakery and have wanted very much to know more about Ukraine, because the war will not last forever. It will be done, it will be gone, and we will need to rebuild in Ukraine. And when that happens, I would so much enjoy if each one of us could go to Dnipro, Ukraine, learn about their culture, learn from them, and become better citizens ourselves of Amarillo, Texas. Thank you for letting me speak.
Glenda, thank you so much. The story is fascinating, both in how Kind House Ukraine Bakery has started and grown and the number of people it's impacted, but just to know that there are citizens of Ukraine and people with strong Ukrainian connections living in our city. You're already our friends, our neighbors. You are Amarilloans, even though you are also Ukrainians. And I think that's important for us to acknowledge. So, Council, you each have a copy of the letter from Mayor Filato. Filato, did I say that right? Yes, okay. And you can see the request from Dnipro is that we begin conversations to enter into a sister city relationship with them. I thought it was important for Glenda to come and tell the story, that this letter didn't just fall out of the sky. It's been years in the making and relationships that already exist between people in Amarillo and people in Dnipro. And I wanted to get feedback from the council on if this is something that we should consider and pursue.
Absolutely.
Yes? Do we have a consensus on that? Or you have reservations, Councilmember Stanley?
No, ma'am. I would just want to do a thorough vetting of the 501c3 and everything that's kind of tied to it, just so we had more background and history on where you come from, where you've been before we did anything formal.
Absolutely.
But I don't have any problem with taking a good hard look at it.
So, Council, I think what the next steps look like in order to move that forward would be to put an action item on the agenda for us to consider joining the sister cities. And the membership it's small. It's $1,000. Kind House has offered to pay that for us, which I appreciate that. I do believe that the city should pay that, not ask the nonprofit to pay that. And it supports us already in the sister city relationship that we have with our sister city in Mexico, which we have not fostered very well in recent years. But having that membership would support that sister city relationship as well. So I think the next step possibly is to have an action item involving that membership fee, or how could we give you direction based on a discussion agenda item, Jared? I don't know what kind of consent you need documenting that.
Unless there's any objections, I think I have enough information to be able to move forward and bring something to council at some point.
Okay. And then I think we'll begin a conversation with Mayor Filato about what do we want this to look like? And before we enter into any formal document about that, I think Councilmember Stanley has some questions that he will want to ask. I think otherwise, though, anyone else? Okay, I
And I'll
think
be
that's
glad
it.
to pass on my documentation to you.
Yeah,
So
be
if-
great. Your sistercities.org, any information you have about that would be helpful as
I've
well.
sent that to Mayor Nelson, so we
Yeah,
can
if
get that
we
forwarded to
could
you.
get that, it'd be
Absolutely.
great.
Sure.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn.
I've got a question for you. I see the map included with this information, but I got this letter from the mayor of Dnipro. Is that the way to pronounce it? I looked on the mapping app that I have on my phone, and I saw 2 towns with that name. One north of Kiev, and then one that's on this map. Which one is it?
Dnipro is shortened for Dnipropetrovsk, and so actually they are by regions. So even Kiev, the city, it is the capital of its domain, which we would consider a state, okay? So Dnipropetrovsk is one whole region, and then Dnipro is the capital of that region. And so if there's one on the map that's above Kiev, I don't know of that, but I'd have to look at it carefully. Maybe there's a slightly different spelling to it.
Tatiana, do you want to?
I will comment on it. Do you hear me well? I have a loud voice.
If you don't mind coming to the microphone, it would be wonderful. Come forward. That way, because there are people at home watching on the video. That way, people who are watching online can hear.
Specific accent. So,
Grab that microphone and pull it a little closer.
Pull a little closer, Glenda. Thank you.
okay. So the old name of the city was Dnipropetrovsk. Why it was Petrovsk? Because Petrovsk was a communist and revolutionary. A few years back, the city of the Dnipro changed its name from Dnipropetrovsk to Dnipro, Petrovsk.
Okay.
And the region, because war started, kind of fell behind. So city is already Dnipro, but the whole region is Dnipropetrovsk. That being said, I could tell you, if you go outside of Amarillo and outside of Dnipro, you will not see difference. It's really the same culture, the same economy. It's just so much in common. People ask me, how did you adopt to Amarillo, to the United States or whatever? I said, perfectly fine. It's exactly the same. I just speak another language. But the same value, the same cultural approach, and the same all humanitarian values. And if any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
And another reason that Dnipro you might have seen on your map, Dnipro north of Kiev, is the Dnipro River originates north of Kiev and runs all the way through Dnipro and then all the way down into the ocean or into the sea.
Absolutely right. It's a huge river with the same name, Dnipro.
So is this Dnipro, I'm seeing on this map, it's near, isn't that Zaporizhzhia? Isn't that where they have the
Yep.
nuclear reactor that they've been fighting over?
Right, right. Ukraine, what does it mean? I was a young physician when Chernobyl happened. I went through that disaster, a catastrophe, and I learned from that. So I could tell you a lot about Ukraine and about this particular region.
Thank you.
Got one other question. I
Sure.
appreciate what y'all are doing, both of you. But what's the address of your restaurant or bakery? Is it open yet or not?
It will be open in mid-November, 4715 Southwestern.
Okay,
It's just down from Ace Hardware.
okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you so
All
much,
right.
Glenda. Thank you
so
all.
much.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Ginger and councilors. I appreciate as a citizen of Amarillo.
Thank you.
you, ma'am.
Thank you. We appreciate you, too. This is an exciting opportunity for us to grow culturally, but also just for people helping people is part of Amarillo culture. And that was why when I got this letter, I felt like it was important for us to put it on the agenda and to at least get some direction and feedback from the council on how we wanted to move forward. So, okay. Let's go back up to the announcement regarding the Director of Finance. Mr. City Manager.
All right, Mayor, thank you. Matt Poston, if you could just stand up and come on over to the microphone just in case. He loves to talk.
And attention, too. He's a real attention hound.
Just like we've been doing for years now, I like to, anytime we have a new director or a new key position, I like to introduce that person to council. In this case, it's someone you've seen before for many years. Matt Poston is our new Director of Finance, replacing Debbie Reed, whose last day was last Wednesday. Matt brings a wealth of experience to us, but more than that, he brings a wealth of proven extremely high-level work performance for the City of Amarillo, which made his selection as Director of Finance a pretty straightforward selection. So a little bit about his background. Bachelor's and master's degrees in accounting from WT. Certified public accountant since 2015. He's served in several capacities in both finance and accounting during his time with the city. Been with the city for over 7 years full-time, coming up on 8. And interned with the finance department throughout college. So we're his home, and I love that Matt, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but appears to be committed and has the hook that we're always looking for, especially in a really high-performing person who's going to be with us for a long time. So Matt Poston, our new Director of Finance, very, very important position. We've received awards for decades based on our financial performance and our financial accounting. Matt's going to continue that and has been a part of it for the last 7 years. So if there's any questions for Matt, he can answer them. Otherwise,
I just want to say, Matt, we couldn't have picked a better person to be that position. After serving on the audit subcommittee for the past 5 years and watching you move your way up, it's kind of nice that now there's another guy that's actually in that meeting for a change instead of being all women all the time.
Women know how to pinch pennies.
They obviously do. Matt is a stellar performer. He knows there was never a question that he couldn't end up answering anytime we were talking through these things, and I don't think they could have picked anybody better. So, Matt, congratulations and welcome.
Thanks, Matt, thank you for your service to the city. We appreciate you and the team that you lead.
Thank you.
Okay, going back to the agenda, looking at item 1C is a solid waste update. Mr. City Manager.
All right, Donnie Hooper, Director of Public Works, is going to take this one. You saw the first take on this last council meeting. We're going to keep doing this till we're able to get to 2 collections per week. So, Donnie, take it away.
Thank you, and thank you, Mayor, Council. Matt makes me feel my age, very old. I went to high school with his dad, so kind of puts things into perspective. But he was a quality individual as well, and still is. In fact, is with the City of Amarillo also. Before I go through these slides, I want to tell you a little story. I went to TML this past week, and
what is TML, Donnie?
Texas Municipal League annual conference, and wanted to go and network with some people that are in the solid waste industry. I know a lot of people that are there and did get an opportunity to do that, but sometimes there's a divine intervention that happens. The good Lord puts some people in our paths that we can talk to, and that happened to me on the way there. My Uber driver picked me up to take me to the hotel, and I'm always talking to him and asking them what they do, and he said, well, I actually own a small trucking company. And he said, I own a trucking company that has about 5 trucks. We're over-the-road trucking company, been in business for about 15 years. And I said, you're driving an Uber? And he said, trying to keep the company afloat. We have, at the most, we can keep 2 drivers at a time. Sometimes we're down to 1. And he said, I just got back from a trip to Alaska where we had that trip booked. We had a driver. He didn't show up for work for 2 days. I had to jump in a truck and drive to Alaska. I was gone for 2 weeks and had to broker that trip all the way back. He went to Seattle and went to Atlanta and then came back and told this great story of that. So I got to pick his brain for quite a while about what they were going through in the industry, and it made me feel that we're pretty normal with what we're going through here. Then on the flight back, the gentleman that I was sitting next to, we started conversating, and he said, I own a trucking company in Indiana. I'm actually in Houston at a conference where we're talking about CDL drivers, what we're going to have to do to put them in the cab, and so really picked his brain for almost an hour. In fact, we became friends on that flight. And we share the same struggles, all the way from Indiana down to Houston, down to where all these people are from. The trucking industry is facing that as well, the same thing we're facing here in Amarillo. So I thought that was very interesting, and it just made me realize that, what we're going through. And then to top that off, with both of them, I shared with them what we're trying to do here. And both of them were just like, wow, we're going to take some of this information back to us, and how we can do things better in our operations. So great conversation. Just to start to recap, talk about what we talked about in the presentation last week. I'm not going to go over all these, but these were the 16 items that we discussed last time. I want to just piggyback on that and tell you what we've been doing since then. So the next slide will show you what we've done since the last meeting on September the 27th. Starting at the top left, we have new pay rates for CDL drivers. That has now been implemented. They have received those on their paychecks. In fact, I think there was a great amount of enthusiasm after they received those. Some of them were even surprised, I think, that this happened so quick. And we got these, so very good move. Our apprentice program candidates have been interviewed. We talked about the apprentice program last week, and I'm going to talk more about that as we go through the presentation. But we've actually, Alan and Ricky last week spent 3 days just going through applications and making sure that they had all the interviews set up, and spent a lot of time doing that and spending some time on that. So we should have those registers have been submitted, and they should be on board. The 6 that we plan to hire should be on board probably within the next week or so, or at least be ready to go into orientation. So that is moving forward quickly. We did interview quite a few applicants for CDL positions as well, and I'll talk about that as we go through. I have some numbers that I'll give you on where we're at with CDL positions that I think you're going to be very pleased with. I know that I was pleased with. The one number that stood out to me in checking this morning with HR about how many we have lost over the past couple of weeks, and it was 1. So that net negative that we presented last time is starting to take a turn already. Happy about that. Our training track has been designed and built. I'll show you photos of that later in the presentation. That happened really quick. We put that together in 1 week, and we now have a training facility where we can train the apprentices, as well as train and onboard employees that are coming on that maybe have never operated a trash truck before. We've identified our trainers, and I want to talk about that in just a moment. With the apprentice program. In fact, they're here in the audience, and I'm going to introduce those to you here in just a moment. We've purchased dump trailers. As a part of that apprentice program, we talked about one of the things that the apprentices would be doing doing hand collection routes with a truck and trailer. So it's quite a process to get that. Anything that we purchase takes a little bit of time, but they pushed that through, and we really did some shopping in a hurry. We had all hands on deck trying to find trailers, trying to find stuff that we could purchase and get into the program. We also identified 2 trucks that were going out of the fleet that we're going to keep in the fleet to get that program rolling. So very minimal cost to get that going, and it's going to benefit the program greatly. Our roll-off program is fully implemented now as far as being out in the community, and I want to share some numbers with you on that in just a moment also. We purchased GPS units for all of the solid waste vehicles. We're going to be installing those soon. This is just another enhancement that we were thinking about making. And as we discussed that further and further, we realized that when they would get a request to have to go pick up an extra route or something that they weren't not familiar with, that they would have to try to figure out where to go. So we're going to put small GPS units and all that. This should have already been in there, honestly. We probably should have thought about this a long time ago, but that's what things like this do for us, is they just make us continue to think through every little possibility. I think that's going to really help them. Those are in. They arrived. In fact, I got them in my office right now, getting ready to go out. We began the analysis for the evaluation of commercial services. We're going to be able to present that to you at the next meeting. There was some more information that we have to get through on that. We're probably about 75% complete with that analysis, and we'll have that in 2 weeks for you. And also, our innovation team continues to push forward with convenience centers. In fact, we have a meeting this Thursday to discuss the details of that. I will be in that meeting with the innovation team, and we're going to be pushing that as fast as we can get that done, at least to have one pilot convenience center put in the community. And I think everybody's excited about that. And then our final one is a contract for commercial assistance. We continue to work through that. Happy to announce that we have had some successful communication on that with Republic Services. They reached out to me last week. I did meet with them while we were at TML as well. They've identified 2 trucks, and they also have identified 2 personnel that they're willing to put toward this program. Contracts are in their hands right now. Their legal team is reviewing that. I talked to DJ this morning, and he said that he was going to be reaching out by the end of the week, and they would probably have those 2 trucks in within the next 2 weeks. So we should get rolling with he didn't see any problem told me this morning that that should be going within the next 2 weeks. So that's going to be great assistance for our commercial program. That's 2 front loaders and 2 operators. And they actually went out in their company and have located those and brought them in. So we're looking forward to that. Again, the time frame for the arrival of that is 2 weeks. Did talk to Diversified as well. Had a great conversation with Brandon. I think they're still going through that. I asked him to go back, and we talked about some of the things that he was looking at in the contract that he had concerns about. Told him to go back and look through that, and we'd get back together again. Waiting on him to contact me back so that we can finish our conversation on that contract for them. Next slide would be our Cdl Apprentice Program. I'm so excited about this. This is going to be really cool. We did create a mission statement to provide safe, reliable, continuous, and efficient waste collection services to the citizens of Amarillo by training and equipping new operators with knowledge and skills to be able to perform their work at a high level. With us today in the audience back here, we have the first ever in the history of the city of Amarillo apprentice trainers, and I thought it was important enough of a program that we bring them here. These select members were selected by Alan and I. We spent time going through people who were interested in that. We wanted to make sure that they had a tenure, that they were very excellent operators, they had positive attitudes, they were respected by the people that they work with. So we went through quite a process with that, but we've identified that these people have stuck with us through thick and thin. They're the ones that have been here. They're the ones that have worked the long hours. They are the ones that have sacrificed their family time, and I thought it was good to bring them here and recognize them in front of you so that they could hear us say these things that we say every week or every 2 weeks when we're here, but they could hear that. Also, the coordinators are here as well, but I want to introduce the apprentice program field trainers to you. So if y'all would, I told them they didn't have to talk, they didn't have to say anything, but I just want to at least introduce them one by one. Dana Blatt. Dana, stand up. Dana has been in a CDL operator for 40 years. Been with the city of Amarillo for 4 years, but if you just get 5 minutes to talk to Dana, you want to go out and drive one yourself. Positive attitude, just a great person to be around. So thank you, Dana, for your service and committing to do this. Juan Cervantes is a knuckle boom operator. And Juan is the same thing. You talk to him for about 5 minutes and you just get excited about what he's doing. Such a positive attitude. He's been an operator for 20 years. A lot of experience that he brings to the program. Thank you, Juan. Appreciate it.
What is a knuckle boom?
A knuckle boom truck is what goes and does the front yard collections,
Okay.
our big bulk collections.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Sorry about that. We get used to all these terms and we just spit them out. Joe De La Cerda, here. There's Joe on the end. Joe, we didn't even get 2 seconds into the conversation. He said, I want to do it. I'm in. I want to train. I love training people. I love helping people. Great positive attitude. Great operator. Been with us. He's a commercial operator. He's been with us for 10 years. Thank you, Joe. Edgar Tillery. Edgar's the same way. All of these have really the same story. They just have a magnetic personality. Good people. He's been an operator for 2 years in an ASL truck. An ASL is an automatic side loader that pick up the polycarts on our polycart routes. He's been doing that for 2 years, but he's been an operator for 7 years. And his comments were he's looking forward to training people and bringing them up in the business as well, so, and retaining employees. So thank you, Edgar. Appreciate it. And Leon Rayhorse. Leon's a residential operator. He has 4 years of experience with us. And Leon said, this is funny, and I'm going to tell a story on him. But Leon said, what if they don't like the temperature in the truck that I like it to be at? And I said, I bet y'all can work it out. And he said, yeah, I bet you we can. So I just thought it was real funny, and I think he was being funny about it. But very dedicated employee, and Leon does a really great job for us. Thank you, Leon. And then last but not least, Eric Ponce, residential operator for 1.5 years. She's the newest of. They're the newest. This is the newest operator that we have that we were really looking for people that had maybe a couple of years of experience, but with 1.5 years of it and talking to the coordinators, the supervisors, they were like, oh no, Eric is top notch. So thank you, Eric. We appreciate it, and we're looking forward to the service that they're going to provide. So I wanted to introduce them to you, 2 more real quick, and then if y'all have a comment you'd like to make, I'll let you do that. Ricky Rivera is the superintendent. Ricky's sitting over here. He is overall of solid waste. Ricky comes to us, and I think y'all have met Ricky before, so no introduction needed there. And also we have the commercial coordinators. Dana Cervantes is here. Severance. Dana Severance is here, apologies. And also James Lester is here. And James is our residential coordinator. Dana is our commercial coordinator. They are the ones, when you go pull their time cards, they have 70 hours on their, you can go pull it at any time. There's 65, 70 hours a week. just dedicated employees. So I wanted to introduce them to you, and if y'all wanted to say something, I'm going to let them go because they asked me before the meeting, they said, do we have to stay because we have to finish our routes? That's how dedicated they are, so I'm going to let them go and do their routes.
Well, we're going to show our appreciation first with a round of applause for you guys. Thank you. It is rare when we get to see employees face to face and to say thank you for what you're doing to impact the services that we're bringing the community. You have gone above and beyond. We know that. Council knows that. Donnie has faithfully reported how hard you're working and the sacrifices that you're making. And we want to say we're grateful and we appreciate you. We see the work that you're doing too, and we appreciate it. Council, any other comments to add to that?
I just want to say I appreciate what you and the rest of your staff is doing. I'm confident we're going to get there. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm sorry y'all had to come to a city council meeting. We've got really important things to do, so go and get them done. But we do appreciate it. We appreciate the attitude and the willingness to step up to the training positions as well. We think it's a great idea. And Donnie, we appreciate your leadership too. Thank y'all.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Yes, be safe.
All right, the next slide will show you, I talked about the roll-off program. What we've done, we have these out in locations all across the community now, and we wanted to really find a way that we could gauge how they were doing, because when we went through National Cleanup Day and we collected 84 tons of material in...
Monica, can you jump out there and take their picture before they all hop on the elevator?
Great
Thank
idea.
you. Yeah.
Great idea. Should have thought of that. We wanted to 84 tons during National Cleanup Week. That was a week worth of collections, and we surpassed our goal that we had, or our numbers that we had from the previous year. So we're excited about that. Well, we decided we would leave them out as convenience drop-off locations while we were going through this time until we could get back to twice-a-week collections, see how that they would do. We made sure that we'd track the numbers so that we could come back and see which ones were doing well, which ones were not. Where we needed to possibly move some, make some changes. And you can look at the number on this graph. We did 360 tons in 4 weeks. That, do the math real quick, that's 90 tons a week. So we're doing more now a week than we were doing a National Cleanup Day week that we collected. So we're seeing success there. We've had residents call us and say, hey, don't take those away. We're using them. And they are. We know that there's probably some people sneaking some commercial items in there. That's okay. It's not in the alleys right now. It's really for residential collections, but they are working. And so you can see 360 plus tons of material that's been taken off. And I know that's not really a part of what we're talking about today, but it is indirectly a part of what we're doing. I just wanted to share that with you, the success of that program and giving citizens another opportunity, another place that they can put their items. All right, so let's talk about numbers on equipment operators. This is a new chart that we're going to present to you today. The starting this week number on the far left is 2 new employees that are starting this week. They were in orientation yesterday. We have 7 employees that are supposed to be starting next week. We have 7 employees that have been offered employment, and they should be starting in a week. So if you total it up, that's 16 that we could possibly have with a -1 that we've lost in that 2-week period. So we're already seeing, I think, the fruition of the pay raises going into effect. So that gives us a total new of 16. We have 34 openings. This is in all of solid waste equipment operators. That includes the knuckle boom trucks, the rear loaders for the alleys, the ASL trucks, all the things that we haven't really talked about in here. And then so that puts our current workforce at 45. 61, well, that's what it is currently, and then 61 would be the potential if we hired all 16 and they stayed on. You know, sometimes, just so you know, we get to that last week and we'll have, 7, we'll have 3 show up for orientation. So that happens, and we're being cautiously optimistic that that's not going to happen this time, but it does. But these are the potential numbers, and needed for 100% would be 79. On the next slide, we'll break that down and go to residential and commercial, the 2 numbers that we look at the most. We have 29 current openings, and we need a combination of 58 to fill both of those roles. Our current residential employee number is still at 20. We need 42, and that's not counting the 2 that started this week. That's just because we're going to wait till they get through orientation and actually get in a truck to decide whether they're going to be in residential or commercial. So still the 20. 42 is the number we need, 9 in commercial, and 16 is what we need in that area. So how are we doing with what we have now? This is the chart. This is what we call our cardiac monitor. I showed you this last week. Our cardiac monitor shows us that when we have a spike, we've got an issue that we need to address. So if you look at that, you see in residential, we've come down and we're holding our own. In fact, we've continued to decline the amount of, these are the amount of complaints that we receive, both through council, city manager's office, public works office, solid waste. We have continued to stay at a steady rate in residential, so we're doing really well there. Even with the shortage of employees, we're doing really well keeping up with it. What we started to see in commercial, after we lost some there, I told you all about that. I think we lost 3 prior to that previous report that we had. We immediately started seeing that spike go up. So that tells us that we have to really put our focus on commercial right now and make sure that we are addressing that issue as it moves forward. So if you go to the next slide, this is what we propose to do with those employees. Is we would, if we could get the 16 that we are going to potentially hire, we'd put 12 of those in residential, which would put our numbers up there at 32 instead of 20. And we would add 4 to commercial, which would make it 13 of 16 positions there. That's probably the best distribution there. Now, we may find somebody that really works well in commercial. That may be 5, and it may be 11 on the other side. We'll have to wait and see how those turn out and what their skill level are of the employees once they come in, even though they have a CDL. But that really, feeling good about it, Councilman Smith, that you said, you feel good about where we're at. I feel good about this and where we're at. I think we're 62 days away from the 90 as of today, and I really feel like that's going to be an easy goal to accomplish if we continue at the rate that we're going now. I told you on the very first presentation I gave you that we would need 36 in residential to go back to twice a week. Well, if these numbers hold, we'll be at 32, and by the time I talk to you next week, we'll be at least at 32 if these numbers hold true. So that should help us with that. This is the next slide shows the apprentice training facility that was built. Basically what we did is we found some real estate at the service center. Traffic came out, engineered that. They made some really difficult curves and turns for them to manipulate. There's an 8-yard dumpster on the right that would represent a commercial in the big photo. Then there's 3 on the left. We use these barriers behind the dumpsters to represent fences in an alley. We even have a big valve that's sitting next to one that is going to represent a gas meter. That'll be moved around. We have 2 or 3 of those. We'll move those around and put them in different locations so that they can manipulate that course with some things in the way. We're going to have some cones around some of the curves as well as they go through that. But I drove it in my pickup truck, and I would have hit a couple of cones in that, so it is going to be a little bit challenging for them. But there are a couple of areas where they don't even really have to drive the course as much as they have to learn how to operate the mechanisms to pick up the dumpsters, the containers, get them some real experience before they go out into the world and work as a CDL operator. We also have identified a way that we can take our apprentices in this program and start training them on the behind-the-wheel portion of the CDL, which was our biggest challenge when it comes to CDL. They can do the written test online, but the behind-the-wheel, our training program that we have here at the City of Amarillo has 1 instructor. Well, she's instructing our trainers on how to push them through that program, and thanks to Mitchell Norman and his staff in HR for working all the details out on that to get that in process. And then the final slide for this report, just telling you what we're going to bring at the next update. We'll be discussing commercial operations, revenues, assets, options for discussing discussions regarding the possibility of moving away from commercial trash collection service. We'll go over the employment numbers again, and we'll discuss a time frame for returning to twice-er per week. That's good enough. Twice per week, the collections, and also discuss other data regarding performance. So I feel like we're at a really good place. I think we've made progress, and I think all of those things combined are what is making that happen. And I think we're going to be able to beat the 90 days and get back to twice-a-week collection.
Thank you, Donnie. Councilmember Smith, do you have any questions? We'll start with you.
No questions. Thank you again for what you're doing.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Councilmember Sauer.
I really don't have any questions other than just kudos to you and your department. You've done something that I didn't know or didn't think was actually possible to actually move the needle. I figured it would take you a lot more to move the needle. Not that you all aren't working really hard to do it right now, but I thought there wouldn't be any way that you would get it done in 90 days, and you're already setting that up to be a for sure deal. So that's pretty awesome. I really appreciate all your work.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Councilmember Stanley.
Yes, ma'am. Excuse me. This says December 8th is the next update. Is that a typo, or should we expect an update?
Oh, no, it was a typo in there. I'm sorry. They're just in 2 weeks. I'm glad you caught that.
2 weeks from now, we'll have
Yeah,
another
2 weeks we'll have
update
another
from
one.
you.
I was looking ahead, and I was trying to plan for Thanksgiving and getting through the month of November when I put that in
Yeah.
there. So thank you for catching that. It will be in 2 weeks. Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I just would echo Councilmember Smith in his ambition and putting this goal out there for you guys. Really appreciate the hard work that you're applying, but I also appreciate the leadership that it takes to kind of set a goal, whether it sounds realistic or not, but to go ahead and get everybody's kind of feet on the fire. Because I know we were all feeling it from our citizens up here as well as you guys. So I do appreciate your response.
Absolutely. Thank you. And, you know, and on our end, it's not just solid waste. It's not just what we're doing, but it's also the leadership from Mr. Miller, Mr. Hartman being fully supportive of everything we're doing and giving us the latitude to come up with crazy ideas and things outside of the box to try to get this accomplished. So, you know, it's top down and bottom up, doing it all. But thank you all for the compliments. Very much appreciated.
Last question. You've mentioned the phrase convenience center a few times. Just for anybody who wasn't part of last week's conversation, what is a convenience center? It's a pilot idea, but what is it?
What the innovation team has been working on for, I mean, has it been a year now? Is that about right? Coming up on a year, is different solutions, things that we can do to enhance illegal dumping efforts. So one of the things, and it kind of parlayed into what we're working on now, too, is really nice. They came up with an idea that we would create a convenience center that would be located on a piece of property that would be big enough for citizens to come to, drive through that, and be able to dispose of items such as tires, tree limbs, wood waste, just junk and debris, household trash, whatever they have, and have a facility that can collect all of that, with in mind the language barrier that we have sometimes. When we put something out, people don't really realize what they can or can't do because of those. So they came up with a brilliant idea. We'll put pictures on there. There'll be pictures of tires on this one. There'll be pictures of tree limbs on this one. There'll be pictures of whatever the material is, so that all you have to do is look at the picture, unload your stuff, and drive through. It'll be in a horseshoe shape where you can drive through and hit everything along the way. And I know that they're going to be bringing a presentation, I would hope, or at least we will, or we'll all do it together. When they get that completed, we're meeting Thursday on that to talk logistics about that, to also talk about what's going to really be feasible with this and what's not. Some of the, but to me, the greatest part of it is watching, I said this at the last meeting, but watching a librarian, a police officer, somebody's involved in the Coming Home program or wherever. They come from so many different areas that have ideas that we never would have thought of, just in our area that we box ourselves in Public Works. So very appreciative of that. They have a great idea. It's a great concept. The idea in long term would be, well, short term is to put a pilot in at one location so that we can work out the kinks and see what works best there. And then once we get that perfected, move it to one area in each quadrant of the city, with the first one being in a quadrant that would stay in that area. Would be city-owned property. That's what we're going to try to find, is places that we already own property, whether it be tax delinquent property or something like that, where we can have it large enough to put the footprint down. The construction of it is very simple. It needs a good hard surface to drive on, such as crushed concrete or something like that, and then just placing the dumpsters and then coming and dumping them. It's really a simple operation. So, but great concept for citizens to use.
Thank you. We appreciate your leadership, Donnie. Thanks for the report. Item 1D is to discuss police reserve force. Mr. City Manager.
All right, we've got Police Chief Martin Birkenfeld to talk about this. It's a great idea, great opportunity. Chief?
Thanks, sir. Mayor, City Council. Over the last couple of years, I've been approached by officers who have either retired or left in good standing, asking, why don't we have a reserve program at the police department? Both of our county sheriff's departments have a reserve deputy program where they can bring in volunteers who have been certified police officers and use them, as needed on a volunteer basis. So we had to do a little research to check on this, and found out, with the help of our legal team, that we can do this. It does require City Council's approval of this, and so I wanted a chance to get before you and just talk about it and see if there's feedback or any questions that you might have or any concerns that I can answer before we try to bring a proposal to you. Our goal is just to create a small pool of officers who can help provide some auxiliary services sometimes. One example I can think of last year when we had the bombing incident over in the Paramount neighborhood, we had to hold a perimeter for several days, and that required quite a bit of overtime, quite a bit of switching of officers' hours and things like that. This would be an example where we could also call on our reserves and say, hey, can you come help us supplement what we're doing? It also allows our honorably retired or discharged police officers to keep their connection with the police department. Most of our officers have hearts for service. Even when they move on to other opportunities or move into retirement, they love the police force. They still want to be a part. And so this gives them a chance to keep their roots here and volunteer some of their time. So what it requires from council would be an ordinance that we'd bring before you to authorize the creation of a reserve force, and then also as new members are brought on board, the state law requires that those members be approved by council. So I would plan on bringing those in groups and allowing council to review those and authorize those. For the applicants, we'll create the policy. Our applicants initially are going to be former Amarillo police officers, and we feel like this is the best model to start with because we know those officers' training, we know their history, we have their records readily available, so the background checks will be easy for us to get started on. All the officers, even though they've had a previous background, they have to undergo a new background investigation so that we can make sure we're not missing anything. The officers will be required to attend all of the training that are full-time police officers. There will be no exceptions for that. And then we're going to require them to volunteer a minimum amount of time. We're looking at potentially 40 hours per year that we would ask the officers to volunteer their time. They could do that all in one big piece or just in little pieces as needed to fulfill that requirement. For us, we've still got a lot of work to do. If this is approved in the future, then we'll have a policy to create internally to make sure that we're in compliance with state law and with local best practices. We don't anticipate sending our reserve officers just out on patrol. Generally, we would have them serve as backup or riding with another officer or doing internal work such as investigations, different things where they will have a certain amount of oversight because, as we know, once we're separated from a job, sometimes we start losing those skills quickly, so we don't want to put anybody in a bad situation. This is in no way meant to supplement our minimum staffing requirements. Those will be in place, and those will always be staffed with our full-time police officers. It's simply an augmentation of that, and certainly in times where we need extra officers like the perimeter thing I was talking about, or we have like the Tri-State Fair Parade's a good example where it requires 20 to 30 officers. Most of the time we can get that filled. Occasionally we have some gaps that we might ask our reserve officers to come in and volunteer their time to help fill that. And then the administration of the program, at first we'll have to take that on in-house, but our goal is to have some of the reserve officers also do the administration, the paperwork, to help keep the program running. That's pretty much a quick summary of it. I'm welcome to any questions.
Council questions?
Will retired officers be interested in doing this?
They will. I can think of two offhand that have talked to me in the last couple of years, and they were looking for an opportunity to volunteer their time. One, we specifically talked about a reserve program. The other, he was just interested when we had a different major incident, saying, hey, you've got a bunch of retired officers that'd be willing to come help you. And then we have other officers, for example, who have gone to one of our large weapons factories nearby that they love their job out there, but they want to maintain that connection here. So we would probably be able to bring some of those officers back as reserves as well.
Good.
And they maintain their other full-time job.
Thank you.
Chief, would these reserves be able to work for pay in the community at different functions or events, things like that?
Based on all we looked at different cities. Fort Worth is an example of a department that has reserves, and generally we would not allow that. We don't. First of all, we're going to give preference to our full-time officers, but it creates a lot of additional issues because the oversight of off-duty work for us is a big deal. We want to make sure that we know what our officers are working and what they're doing, because there's certain types of jobs that we don't allow police officers to work in an off-duty officer capacity.
Okay.
So initially, I don't think we would allow the reserve officers to do any police work for pay under our badge.
Okay. Thank you.
I assume all the liability issues have been checked out by
Yeah,
legal?
we've been talking for several months with legal, and there are provisions that council can allow the reserve officer to have the same level of injury protection if they're injured on the job, and that being on-the-job injury. But the liability, we feel like, is mitigated a little bit by the fact that we know their level of training and their backgrounds. And so the job that they would be doing would be similar to a full-time officer, and so there's no added liability per se because the jobs are the same.
And as far as health insurance, were they to be injured on the job, they're not still covered? I guess as a retired employee, what kind of coverage do they get?
We do have insurance available for retirees, but that's not they have to select it and pay the rate for it. So they may or may not
They may have
be
other
on that
coverage,
retiree
yeah, okay.
insurance. But what the chief was saying is if they're injured, that injury while working in a volunteer capacity for the city of Amarillo will be taken care of by the city, just like if there was an employee that got injured. Not through insurance necessarily, but through workers' comp and other things.
And as far as carrying weapons, Chief, I mean, again, some of these are all officers. We trust them to carry weapons. They've all been trained to carry weapons. So they're going to continue to receive the training and all that. I'm just curious because somebody's going to ask me, will they carry weapons?
Yes, they will.
Okay.
Yes.
And they're all certified peace officers, and this volunteering with the city of Amarillo through a reserve program is also a component of something that will help them continue to be able to carry that peace officer license. Isn't that correct? So there's a benefit to the volunteers. There's a benefit to the full-time officers. There's a benefit to our community. And if we have something where someone feels like it's not a benefit, we're going to work through it to make sure we address it. This is going to be a win-win-win for everybody concerned. That's our goal. It definitely pluses up the capabilities of our department to be able to handle things like parades and large-scale events and other things like that. So
I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great idea, and I even just like the idea of continuing the wisdom in the department that occasionally retires due to physical limitations or whatever would still be available to the community of the department, and I think that's really important.
We do too. You know, we just had an officer a couple years ago retired with over 40 years of service, and just the wealth of institutional knowledge that goes with a person like that is invaluable.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I think that's all the questions. Sounds like you're going to have support for it, so
Thank you.
whatever we need to put on the agenda as far as an action item.
We'll get to work on it.
Yeah, get to work on it, exactly.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Chief. Agenda item 1E is updates from council members serving on outside boards and commissions. Mayor Pro Tem Frida Powell is not with us today because she covered a commitment on our other sister city. She is visiting with a group of cities, American cities who have sister cities in Mexico. So she's away for that event today. So we won't do that report on the Convention and Visitors Bureau. But Parks and Rec and Animal Management, Councilmember Sauer, if you don't mind.
Sure. So Parks and Rec first. So the meeting was pretty much uneventful, and actually we didn't get very far in the meeting when Michael Kashiba said some stuff that I thought was kind of took my mind off the rest of the meeting. One of the first things that he said was he talked about the master plan, and what I wanted to speak about that just a little bit is the fact of we have some really great directors in the city. I mean, we've already listened to Donnie and all of the things that he's doing, and Michael's another one of those. So if you've ever wondered, do these master plans that we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, do they ever go anywhere? This one is a perfect example of what actually happens with those master plans. So they met with staff and they discussed, they took a look at the master plan and the tasks, and he assigned those tasks to the appropriate division for execution. So he said, we're looking at this master plan as a 10-year master plan. And so not only did this master plan come through, and it gives us all these ideas for what we can do to make our parks better, but he picked that thing up, turned it into a living document, and it's been assigned, and we have our Parks Department is taking care of that, and they have a plan for how they're going to address that over the next 10 years and see that plan be complete and come to fruition. And I think that is vitally important for the things that we want to see happen in the city. You know, there have been a few problems with parks and over the past few years, but ever since Michael has come on, he has helped set up something that we can turn it around, and those parks are going to become an asset to us again. And so I really appreciate that part of it. The only other thing that I'm going to report on was something that I thought was real interesting is in all of the fees and the fee changes that went along, and Michael, you may have to kind of explain this a little bit better, but there's now going to be a new non-motorized boating permit. So you'll be able to take paddle boards out on a couple of the lakes if you have a permit for that. You want to explain that anymore? Or because I think that's something that a lot of people aren't going to know about, and I'd like to take the opportunity for another opportunity for it to be able to get out and people understand there's a new opportunity for those who want to be out on paddle boards or whatever out on some of these area lakes that we have.
Yeah, correct. So we're actually working through the process with Texas Parks and Wildlife, but we would be looking at non-motorized watercraft in some of our community lakes. So things like Meta Park, Thompson, the new Martin Road once it's completed, southeast Playa potentially. So we're looking at different opportunities for people to put a kayak in the water, canoe in the water, just a different type of recreation than we've offered in the past. So also when we designed Thompson Pool, we had it in there so that you could, in theory, put a kayak in the lazy river and practice against the current. So everything from still water to moving water. So it's just something that, again, is another opportunity for our community.
And that's really pretty much, unless there's other things that you wanted to bring up from that.
We're good.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I've had quite a bit of email actually about wanting to be able to kayak in our water. So I'm glad.
This is a pretty cool opportunity.
And I think that, Michael, I assume that's coming from citizens asking questions, asking for access, and you guys being responsive to those citizen requests?
Yes, and also stuff that staff is identifying as potential opportunities.
Yeah, great. So that's a great partnership coming from both of those places. So
Okay.
next.
Okay, so the next one is Animal Management and Welfare Advisory. So whenever Victoria gave us a lot of information on what was happening, one of the interesting things that's ended up we're seeing is I don't know if people actually realize that the intake of animals in the pound, in the animal management welfare, is over 900 animals a month. So if you can imagine bringing in 900 animals a month, and how do we take care of those animals, get them to rescues, get them back into their owner's hands, or do all of that, you can realize that they have got a pretty huge task of getting that to actually end up happening. And so that probably in and of itself is probably one of the biggest conundrums that the department is currently facing, is how do they handle that. Another thing that I thought was very interesting was that currently there's 5 field officers, and on an average day they field about 75 calls a day over their period. And if we were to put that out times 365, if you did it times 400 to make it really easy, that's a lot of calls. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of calls that they're taking in, and things that are having to happen there. And so they're slowly working through that, because just like what's going on in almost every other department, the biggest problem is staffing, and having adequate amount of staff to take care of all of the things, not only having enough facilities, but having enough staff to take care of it. So in the shelter itself, over the past quarter, there have been 11 new hires, and currently there are 6 positions that are posted and available. Whenever you look at the field services, they've got 2 new field officer trainees, and they've promoted 3 of the officers to the 2nd level of
officer, and currently there are 5 field officer trainees that are posted for new jobs, and also a field supervisor. So there is 6. There's a need for 6 more field officers. As far as some other things that have happened, which has also been in the news, is August the 15th, the Humane Society notified the city that they would be moving out of the shelter, and that ended, and they would vacate their space on September the 30th. So therefore, at that point in time, Animal Management Welfare assumed the rescue placement duties on August the 16th. So now then that's been added to all of the things that need to be done. And so the city ordinances, we've already approved that to reflect the changes. As far as the rescue program that they're now having to implement, they had a meeting that they held on the 15th. They've hired 2 staff for rescue and rescue manager and a rescue specialist. They have 5 official rescue partners in Amarillo and 2 near Dallas. They placed 190 pets since the 16th of August. 22 were sent to Dallas on September the 3rd. There's what's called a Best Friends Incentive Program with the rescue partners that as they take these animals, they can receive up to $125 to $200 per animal. And there has been over $6,000 that has been awarded in the first 3 weeks of that, to give you kind of an idea. As far as the adoption program, I guess one of the biggest things is understanding the number of volunteer hours. Just imagine, August, there were 122 hours of volunteer hours that went on at the, so the city is stepping up, trying to help with, the citizens are trying to help with all of the things that are going on, and trying to help them make breach that difference that's going on. The community outreach, since May, they have had 9 different events, from Mutt Fest at Starlight Ranch to even at the State of the City. There were 5 dogs adopted and lots of chewy items that were, and all through that there were, they've done an awful lot. Like Clear the Shelter, there were 73 adoptions on that day from 10 to 5. So there's a lot that's actually going on. They're also have weekly media spots on Channel 4, on the Eagle, and on ABC Channel 7. And the other thing is that's going on right now currently is the Return to Home Challenge. During the month of October, there's free microchips at the shelter through October, and they're going to have pop-up microchip clinics held each Saturday of the month at different parks. And they've had some, I don't know, Victoria, if you want to address how successful that the pop-up, and it might be worth talking about exactly how great that has worked, and why on such of a late notice doing those, it's been turned out to be they've had great response.
What our pop-up shelters have our pop-up vaccine clinics and microchip clinics, what they've really been able for us to do is look at those high areas where we know there's a lot of stray animals, where we're picking up a lot of animals, and we're here in the community, they want the animals picked up, but we also have to figure out how do we, with 900 to 1,000 animals sometimes coming in a month, like it was in August, we really had to look about how are we going to address this. And so we looked at the areas where we had our highest calls for stray animals. And so we're still doing free microchips out at the shelter all this month. But we understood there was a lot of socioeconomic issues that were involved as far as microchipping and vaccines. So we are taking those and we're going out to their community so they can walk there. We can talk to them. If they don't have the ability, a lot of time it is a monetary problem. And so we go out into the parks. We were just at Eastridge. Unfortunately, it rained pretty hard, or it was pretty cold on Sunday or Saturday, so we didn't quite have the turnout. But we've even gotten to the point where we'll send officers out and our volunteers. We have volunteers from Amtech who have been amazing, and Texas Tech, Vet School, and Vero, which is the program out of WT. And so they've all come out, and they don't mind going around the neighborhood and talking, and our officers are also being able to go up to doors. We see somebody with a, hey, come and let's microchip it. And that way we can microchip it out in the field, and it never has to come to the shelter. Ideally, the officer could pick up the animal, scan it, call it, and get it back to the owner. So we're really trying to address, that's one more way that we can address keeping animals out of the shelter and getting them back home. Our officers, too, are right now, this whole month, if they are out, we're really working on compliance and education. So when they're out on a call and they're talking to somebody about how to keep a dog in, they also have the ability at this time, they have microchips on their trucks to microchip animals when they're out on calls, and just try to be more proactive before they even get to the shelter.
Great idea.
So that's really pretty much everything that I had, other than I just wanted to reiterate the fact of the relationship with Texas Tech Vet School. They've taken 20 of the dogs and have adopted 16 cats, I think, so far, which I think that's really interesting, along with the relationship that has been created with the vet school, also the one with Amtech. There are, 6 interns?
We currently have 6 interns from the AMTEP program that are amazing. The kids are there all the time. They're the ones that are showing up, too, on the weekends. They're doing that extra. They'll go out and advocate for our animals, so they've been a really good addition.
Yeah, so we've had some really great partnerships that have developed over the past year. So
man.
That's everything that I had.
Great work, Victoria. Any questions, Council for Victoria or Councilmember Sauer? Okay, thank you all very much. Anything on agenda item 1F? Okay, moving on to agenda item 2, the consent agenda. Anything there that needs to come off for further discussion or questions? Hearing nothing, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yes, Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Sauer and seconded by Councilmember Smith to approve the items on the consent agenda. All of those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, same sign. That passes with a 4-0 vote. Moving on to section 3 of our agenda. Who's here that's a WT student? Are y'all all excited that we just passed over all those agenda items and you were thinking you were going to have to sit through them? Yeah, I thought that might be the smile on your faces. Okay. Item 3A is to consider and award an implementation services contract for enterprise resource planning software. Mr. City Manager.
Hi, Mayor. We've items A, B, C, and D are all part of the same project. It's a large project. It's our enterprise resource software, really. This is a project where the software package that we've been using, the software package, the company sold in 2010. I think the last time the software was updated would have been 12, possibly 13. But we know, and we knew it was coming for a long time, that it was going to stop being a viable software for us to use to manage the entire organization. So, and primarily it's the inward-facing part of what we do from a software standpoint, managing all departments, finance, also coordinating with our external-facing software in areas like utility billing. So this is a big deal. We knew it was a big number. We've been working on it for a decade. We've been working on it aggressively for the last 4 years, knowing that it was about to end. So with all of that said, we have Chief Financial Officer, Assistant City Manager Laura Storrs. We've got Assistant City Manager Rich Guyon, and we also have Laura will introduce our consultants so what we're going to do is we're going to do a large presentation. Well, it's not going to be a long presentation, but we're going to do a presentation that's going to cover A, B, C, and D. Then y'all will be able to ask questions, take action on A. We'll have a very short presentation before B, C, and D, just to make sure that everyone's very clear on what those components represent. And these are things where if we choose not to approve one of them, we're then going to actually be killing's the wrong word, not approving all 4, because they do, for one to go forward, all 4 have to go forward. So with all of that said, with that very brief introduction, Laura Storrs, take it away.
All right. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. As Jared mentioned, we have been working on this project for quite a while. So first and foremost, I want to say a thank you to Debbie Reed, who retired last week actually and is not able to join us today because I hear she's enjoying the mountains on her first trip in retirement. But she has worked diligently her entire time she was at the City of Amarillo. So for 2 years, working to move this project forward. This project is several years in the making. As Jared mentioned, our legacy software is about 20 years old and has not been actively developed in many, many years. I'll let Rich expand upon kind of the importance of this software and a little bit more about that in just a second. But along with that, I also want to recognize Matt Poston, our new finance director. Debbie has passed the torch on to him, so she kind of got it to this point, and now Matt is to take it and run with it and to move it forward and get it implemented. And we're hoping Debbie will come back at some point and celebrate with us when we do get this fully implemented. With us today, we have Ryan Doyle with Barry Dunn, and he will be coming up to do a presentation related to these 4 agenda items. We also have Anthony Garcia with Workday, and that's actually the software provider that is being recommended for approval. And then we have Art Rustin with Collaborative, and they're the group that are going to be helping us with implementation of this software. So a couple of quick things I wanted to address before I hand this over to Rich. As we walk through items 3A, 3B, 3C, and 3D, you will see some large dollar amounts on there. First off, on item A and item C and D, we're looking at a lot of upfront costs, a lot of implementation costs that will span most likely about a 2 to 4 year period. It's going to take us some time to implement this software. It touches every aspect of our organization. But as we look at item B, we're looking at an actual software contract that spans a 15-year period. It's a not to exceed amount. This is something that we're very excited to bring forward. We don't normally bring 15-year contracts to council. However, in the rising rate environment we're in on everything, to lock in a 15-year certainty in a software contract is a great win for our organization and our community. So we've been talking about this project for the last couple of years during our budget review workshops with you all. We also brought this forward back in late August to do a debt issuance for part of the upfront cost of this software. There was a tax note that was approved for half of it, about $4 million, was to pay for the upfront cost of this. We got the money in the bank back in September. That is in place, ready to go. That's the general funds portion of this. The other funds already had dollars approved through their capital projects to fund the upfront cost, and then the ongoing costs that are heavily associated with the annual cost of item B, 3B, which comes to about $1.2 million roughly per year. That has already been approved by you all during the budget process and is in the general fund, the water and sewer, the airport, and the drainage ongoing annual budgets. And so, again, certainly understand these are large dollar amounts. Everything has come in within the budget that you all have authorized through the budget process. And again, the biggest piece here on item 3B will be paid out over a 15-year period. And so with that, I want to go ahead and hand this over to Rich to go into a little bit more detail on this. One other thing I forgot to mention, by locking in a 15-year agreement on this software, this actually is going to save the city what we're estimating about $1.8 million over that 15-year period. We feel like that's a huge win. Those are taxpayer dollars that are that we're saving, locking it in for this time period. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rich, and then we will pass it to Ryan and answer questions that you guys have.
Good afternoon. So from an IT perspective, ERP or enterprise resource planning software is the backbone of any organization. It is not just accounting and finance and purchasing and payroll and HR software. It also interfaces with almost every other piece of software the city uses, and it houses all the automated processes that make a business run. As such, this is the most impactful and critical software update that the city will do or has done up till now. It was important to me that we look at this now because the ERP we have right now is decades old, and this is a multi-year project. I can tell you, without disclosing details, we're already making special efforts in IT to keep this software secure. This is not the software we want to be expired, end of life, and not getting security updates. So we wanted to start with time to be able to convert to a new software before we found ourselves in a vulnerable position. So the timing was important. The other reason, and the primary reason I really wanted to speak to you today, is this is out of the norm. Typically when you see technology contracts and recommendations come out of IT, they're 5 to 7 years. There's a couple of reasons for that, and Laura really hit the nail on the head. We're seeing 30% increase in hardware costs and in IT across the country. We're seeing 18 to 21% increase in software, including software as a service. This contract gives us the ability to lock those costs in now at today's dollars, but also gives us the performance guarantees, and like any government contract, the ability to step out of that contract should we choose to do it. So it's really a win-win for us. We lock in at today's dollars, but we have the ability to hold them accountable to performance, and we have the ability to step out of the contract. The last thing I would close with is, as you know, I'm a private sector guy. I come from companies with modern ERPs. I can't overstate the impact that this will have on us as an organization in every department, even from starting with an efficiency standpoint. As the IT director, without many hours of admin work, I couldn't tell you how we were performing against budget today. This will give all of our directors the ability to tell you where they are against budget within minutes, not days, weeks, or months. And with that comes not only accountability at our director level, but improved transparency. Our transparency right now is a 400-page PDF that we post on the website every day. These kind of tools give us the ability to have much better transparency with our public, not only on what our budget is for the year, but how we're performing against that on an ongoing basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich.
Okay, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ryan Doyle with Barry Dunn, and he's going to go through a presentation for you guys.
Excellent. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Honored to be here today, and thank you, Rich and Laura, for the opening comments. They stole a little bit of my thunder, so they've helped to set the stage for that. So we've prepared a little bit of a presentation today that will walk you through, as I mentioned, we'll walk through these 4 different agenda items, speak about some of where we've been, where we are today, and where the city's looking to move forward in the future. It really has been a collaborative process. As I walked into council chambers today, I've seen folks that we've met with over the past 12 months, whether it be from the police department, public works, park and rec. I saw Kristen back here. She's been involved on a regular basis as well. Stephanie makes an appearance, a cameo in the presentation as well. It really has been a structured process. It really has been a collaborative process with participation from all across the city. So happy to be here today and speaking on behalf of all the interested stakeholders that have been involved in this project to date. So a little bit about myself, about the firm Barry Dunn at the highest level. I'm a senior manager within Barry Dunn. We are a traditional consulting as well as tax assurance and audit firm. We have been working with the public sector now for just about 37 years. During that time, we've worked with over 400 different local government and state government agencies across the United States, including over 100 different ERP system planning projects. So again, ERP, acronym for Enterprise Resource Planning, really that backbone of software that's used to support not only the technology, but the business processes of local government. So thinking a little bit about Barry Dunn, again, we are independent and objective. I think that's really important to understand about our firm and what we bring to the table. So we really have worked with the city's best interests in mind throughout the course of this process of assessing the current state as well as planning for the future state. So helping to make certain that the city team has the information, tools, and processes in front of them to make a well-informed and educated and thorough decision through this process. So a little bit about the project background, a little bit about the approach. Really, again, I think Rich touched upon this a little bit. One of the key elements to keep in mind is the City of Amarillo is not unique in that you all are using a legacy system that's been in place for nearly 20 years. We are seeing this across the country. We've seen this as well within the state of Texas, having worked with nearly 36 different cities in the state to replace legacy software systems. So we used a structured and collaborative approach to looking at what is the city doing today and what are some of the workarounds that are being used as Band-Aids, if you will, to some of those processes. And ultimately what we found is that a lot of shadow systems existed within the city. So people are using the core software, the core ERP system, but over the last 20 years, needs have arisen and folks have found additional systems to use outside of the core ERP system. Now, why is this such a challenge? This leads to decentralization of data, becomes data management challenges. Folks are entering data into separate software systems and unable to report or query in real time into the information that they need to perform their job duties on a daily basis. I will commend city staff in that they have made it work. That became very evident through meeting with city staff, is that folks have made this work over the last 20 years, but it has reached a critical point where folks are spending as much time in managing data as they are anything else. And really, there's a strong desire among the folks that we met with to not just manage data, but to take that data and make it manageable, be able to analyze it, and be more effective and efficient in the use of data on a daily basis. So Barry Dunn was brought in to help with that assessment process, planning for an RFP, issuing the RFP, and evaluating software systems has taken just 12 months now. So last October is when we started our engagement with the city for this process. I'll touch a little bit more about some of the steps in just a moment here. Ultimately, the outcome of that entire process is these 4 agenda items that we're presenting to you all today. So I mentioned Stephanie make a quick little cameo here. You'll see her picture. You'll see Trent. You'll see Kyle and some others as well from the city team. But really want to talk a little bit about that staff participation. This really has been a Herculean effort by the city staff. This has required a lot of time to get to this point. Folks have been committed to it. And really what the city has done is establish a lot of the best practices that, as a consulting firm, we really like to see, and I think probably the collaborative Workday teams would echo as well, a lot of the steps taken in place already to position the city for success during the implementation process. One thing that has really rang true throughout this entire process is that the city wants to do this correct and to do it the right way from the start. And that started with an executive project team to really steer the project, provide that tactical vision and support, a project management team to help manage the day-to-day organizational and decision-making, a change management team as well to engage stakeholders beyond that core group of individuals. This colorful graphic you see here was actually a banner that was developed and used during the summer staff appreciation luncheon so that folks could go out and find more information about this project as a whole. You'll see a QR code in the bottom left corner of that banner. That took folks out to an intranet site where folks could get up-to-date information about this project, what are the key milestones, and what is the roadmap forward through this assessment and software selection process. A lot of opportunities for stakeholders to contribute throughout this process, so it really has been an engaging and collaborative process. Ultimately, the city did develop just shy of 4,000 functional and technical software requirements to include in the request for proposal that was sent out to the vendor community. There were opportunities for educational software demonstrations to bring staff up to date on what a more modern system may look like as well. Opportunities to participate in the vendor demonstration process once proposals were received, as well as recurring change management communications and updates that have gone out to staff. So really a great team effort undertaken by the city and with the support of Rich and Laura to get here to this point today. So in terms of some of the key milestones, I won't walk through each one of these here, but really what I'd like to highlight as a whole is that this process, as you'll see, we will mention software quite a bit throughout this, but it really is a business transformation process. About 6 months of the project overall was really spent discussing with city staff what is working well, what is not working well, where are areas for improvement in the future, and helping to identify based on that what are the software requirements for the future. How can we align business processes and technology in the future, enable enabling staff to be more efficient and effective in their day-to-day processes. In March of this year, the city did issue an RFP with responses coming in late April. There were 8 responses received to the RFP, so a very strong response rate. That is pretty consistent with what we've seen across the country for cities of a similar size, similar employee base, similar staff population as well. So very pleased with the response rate to the RFP. The city team then went through a process reviewing the proposals. As you can imagine, those were 3-ring binders about this thick with each proposal, with all the content related to the vendors' backgrounds, their methodology on training, how to bring data from the old systems into the new systems, and ultimately how to help position the city for success. So through that evaluation process, the city ultimately brought in several vendors for the demonstration process, identifying the vendors that are here today for recommendation for council. Over the last couple of months, had the opportunity to work through the contracting process. Leading up to that, there was a best and final offer process as well. So opportunity to go back to the vendors and say, okay, you've had an opportunity to meet with the city, opportunity to discuss your product, your project, and your approach, to learn from the city a little bit about their desired outcomes as well. Now it's time to help sharpen the pencils. What can we do to help bring the cost down overall? So those best and final offer responses were received as part of the evaluation process. Ultimately, through the contracting process, thank you, Leslie, for all of your concerted effort in helping with that. There were additional opportunities as well to review and confirm the scope of services, the scope of software, the timelines. Again, ultimately looking to make certain that the city is doing this correct and taking advantage of all the planning that has gone on the past several of years for the city. So about 2 months of contracting processes led us to here today, October, and ultimately looking at a November start date for the implementation process. As Laura mentioned, the implementation process will be quite lengthy. We are looking at a multi-phased approach to the project, beginning first and foremost with human resources and human capital management. So employee files, time and attendance, payroll, applicant tracking. How are we managing our people within the software system? So that process will ultimately take from this November until January of 2024, so about 14 months just for that element of the project. That will subsequently be followed by the financial management element to it, so your general ledger, chart of accounts, budgeting, project and grant management, everything related to procure to pay as well. So a very long process, but again, the city is looking to do this correct the first time, set realistic expectations about timelines, and to do it in alignment with what city resource availability looks like as well. So that brings us to the agenda items 3A through 3C, and I'll touch upon each of these at a high level, and mostly because you probably will need a microscope in order to read that up on the screen there, so apologize for that. But the first one to bring up here is Collaborative Solutions. They are a Workday services provider. We do have Art Rustin, the Director of Sales for Local Government for Collaborative Solutions here as well, if there are any questions. But Collaborative Solutions, in their own words, is 100% focused on Workday practice and 100% deployment success. They have across their organization about 850 different Workday consultants, and have been recognized in the top 2 to 3 of all of the largest Workday practice among partners in their ecosystem. For those unfamiliar, software vendors in the marketplace today, such as Workday, some of the other vendors as well, oftentimes will approach mid-sized market entities such as the City of Amarillo through the use of an implementation partner. So an actual consulting firm that will do the setup, the configuration, the help with the data conversion, so taking our old data, manipulating it to help load it into the new system. That is the role of Collaborative Solutions, a really critical role overall in terms of helping to be hands-on in the system and enable staff to be able to use and learn the system effectively. Workday is that software that the city has selected for that core ERP. So looking to provide that core functionality to be able to replace what the city is using in the legacy ERP, but also expand how the city is using its ERP and to re-envision how software is used. So again, much less about data management, which we see a lot of happening today, but much more about how can we get to that level of abstracting that data, analyzing it, and helping our staff to do more on a day-to-day basis with their job function as opposed to managing the data in the system. The third vendor you'll see on the screen here is Can-Am Technologies, a point-of-sale and cashiering system. This is a software system that is intended to make it easier for citizens, contractors, and others that come to the city to make payments either in person or online for differing software systems. So this is a central point of sales solution to take in monies from citizens and contractors across varying software systems in use at the city. The next one is Barry Dunn in terms of project management services and what the project management services look like. I'd mentioned collaborative solutions is ultimately providing that roll up your sleeves implementation management for the Workday solution. On the Barry Dunn side of the house, we'll be looking to provide our expertise in having gone through project management implementation of ERP systems to really be an extension of the city team during the implementation process. So helping to make certain that city staff have the ability to use their time at the highest and best level from a functional standpoint, while our team will be responsible for leading and overseeing the project management team, directing the work of city staff, and working as that main conduit between the various software vendors and the city of Amarillo. So we will talk a little bit about the future state goals and some of the anticipated benefits. And I won't bore everyone with reading each of these bullets that are here on the screen. You'll see here we've added some emphasis to call out some of the themes. But really, I'd like to reiterate that city leadership is really committed to making the highest and best use of staff time, skills, and knowledge. Had the opportunity to be here a couple of weeks ago and meet with about 16 different city staff to talk about what are our goals for this project and what are our goals for the future for our staff and for the city of Amarillo. And ultimately, folks identified at the highest level that we have a lot of skills and knowledge that's untapped in our city staff today because folks are constrained by some of the legacy software, some of the processes that are in place in order to work with and around that software as well. So one of the goals is really to look at what resources the city has in staff, empower those resources to do more with the software and do less in managing the software on a day-to-day basis. We'd like to provide staff with more visibility into processes and workflows. Currently, it often takes a phone call, a walk down the hall, a few emails to figure out what is the status of a certain business transaction, whether it be has a position been budgeted and approved? What is the status of a contract? Do I have an expiration coming up? A lot of comments from staff about having to set up Outlook ticklers to remind them when they have contracts that are going to be expiring. A lot of workarounds that are in place today that are taking away from staff being able to do more on a day-to-day basis. So really looking to empower staff and give them the tools and technology in order to be more successful in their day-to-day activities. So again, really looking to approach this as a business transformation initiative as a whole. You'll see here at the bottom of the screen here, we borrowed some language from Workday with their permission, just some sample metrics that they have seen from some of their customers in terms of value realization. So taking a look at how long does it take a client to process certain transactions before adopting Workday, and then afterward, circling back to those folks and saying, okay, how much time do you save on a regular basis? Where are the efficiencies that have been realized? And you'll see here some of them include a 50% decrease in open enrollment processing times, 53% reduction in the requisition to purchase order cycle time, a 33% reduction in time to complete annual grant audits, and a 79% reduction in payroll processing time. So we're talking real staff savings here. Again, the hours that each employee are working is what we're looking to save and improve upon through this entire business transformation process. So I've covered a lot of content at a very high level. I'm sure you all have some questions. Be happy to answer those. I may call Laura and Rich and Anthony and Art as well for any particular questions, but happy to answer any questions you all have today.
Council, do we have any questions for Ryan or for Rich or for Laura? I think it's something that we're familiar with based on the timeline that we've invested knowing this was coming. Councilmember Stanley, do you have a question?
Yeah, just a couple questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Sure.
Not in a negative way, not in doubting the selections that are made or the abilities of the software, but just in kind of due diligence because it is a 15-year contract, which is a lengthy one. Rich mentioned before cancellation policy. Could you tell me about the cancellation policy and the terms?
Sure, and I'll look to Anthony to correct me if I misstate anything, but as part of the Workday contract, what the city's actually going to be doing is leveraging a pre-competed contract through the Texas DIR. So there is a contract that's held from Precision Task Group, which is the actual contract holder on the DIR. One of the reasons why that Texas DIR contract vehicle was chosen for this process is because it does include a termination for convenience provision, which is not something that is typically included in a software contract. So by using that pre-competed agreement, it helped to, I'll look to Leslie to confirm this for me, it helps in terms of the contract review process because it is something that has been vetted and competed previously, and it is a contract that's available for use, and it does include that termination for convenience provision, which was attractive to the city team.
So termination 30 days, notice something like that, is that right?
I would have to go back to look at the particulars for that, but I believe that the language is in there that there is some sort of termination window in advance. Typically, with a subscription contract, there is some period of window. It relates to a renewal term about when you would need to submit that sort of convenience.
This particular contract's pretty heavy on the front end because of all the data interface and transfer, so that's close to $4 million or so. Is there any reimbursement or opt-out for any of that money?
No, but one quick clarification that I will add as well. For the software side of things, there actually is a ramp-up overall on the software fees. So the initial fees, as part of this process, Workday did grant to this city a reduction in fees for the first 2 years through the implementation process to help aid with that. In terms of the services on the collaborative side of the house, those are billed as incurred services. So that, it's not atypical. I will say that when we took a look at what the anticipated costs were, before Barry Dunn was actually engaged with the city, when we were first in discussions with the city, we provided some estimates of what we would anticipate for a city of this size the cost to be without any conversations with the city and stakeholders or defining future state requirements. The final cost came in right in line with what we would have expected to see. So we were very pleased to see that.
And on your RFPs, can you give me a range of what you took in? I mean, we had some that were maybe not quite double this proposal, but significantly more. Did we have very many that were less? How does this rank in comparison?
Yep, among those vendors that were identified by the city evaluation panel to move forward in the process, through an RFP process of this size and complexity, there's typically a pre-screening of the written proposals. Do we have vendors that just from a technical implementation methodology standpoint don't quite fit the bill? Of those vendors that moved into the process for the demonstrations, I believe Collaborative was the second least costly, in terms of the overall cost. And that includes the Can-Am, the Workday, everything else is part of that overall proposal.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ryan, very much.
Absolutely.
Rich, Laura, we appreciate the work that you and the team that's worked on this have done. It is a large investment, but just back to what you said, Rich, $1.8 million in savings by negotiating the contract this way. Those are real dollars, and they're taxpayer dollars, and we really appreciate that you have an eye toward making a deal that would save us that kind of money. So thank you for that. So, Jared, you want us to take action on 3A and then come back and take action on 3B, C, and D?
Yes, ma'am. That would be the recommended way of doing it, one at a time, A, B, C, and D. If you have any questions on, this would be taking action on 3A first. If you have any questions, and when we get to B, obviously that's the biggest one, and then C and D, we can obviously stop and answer any questions you have before moving forward.
Okay. Do we have a motion then with
Laura,
regard-
did you have anything to add to that?
Sorry, Laura.
No, the only thing I wanted to reiterate on all 4 of these is these are not to exceed. And so especially as we're working through implementation and project management, we will be paying based on the services that we utilize. So if everything goes miraculously well and it goes very smoothly and quickly, we may not hit these dollar amounts. This is just the upper limit not to exceed amount on these. And the first one on item A, again, implementation services. And so that's the upfront cost that we'll be paying out over probably the next 2 to 4 years.
And that's what the tax notes were done for.
Yes, the tax notes were done for the general fund portion. There was, the budget was about $7 million up front, and that covers implementation services. It also covers project management services and then kind of those upfront software costs. And so, yes, the tax notes and the funds that we have in the bank now do cover all of item A, along with what we had in the water and sewer, airport, drainage budgets as well.
So in essence, what we're doing is now that we're allocating the money that we've already
approved in the budget. That is correct. Yes. So now you're just awarding it, and those budgets are set within what these not to exceed amounts are. And so, yes, this is just actually approving us to move forward, spending those dollars.
Okay. So I move to award a contract for implementation services for the new financial ERP software system for city financial applications and other related systems to Collaborative Solutions, a Cognizant company, in the amount not to exceed $2,382,515.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Sauer and seconded by Councilmember Smith to approve this award with the implementation services contract for enterprise resource planning software. Any further questions or discussion about the motion? Okay. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes with the 4-0 vote. Moving on to item 3B.
Okay, on item 3B, this is the software. This is for the Workday software. And again, this is the 15-year contract that we've discussed at length, a not to exceed amount over that 15-year period. This is included in the annual operating budgets for your general fund, your water and sewer fund, your drainage fund, and your airport fund. Back on the agenda transmittal memo, we kind of outlined that the operating budgets, so these annual costs are divided up about 57% general fund, 35% water and sewer, 4% drainage, and 4% airport fund. And as mentioned, those are already included. You all approve those in the current year approved budget to start funding those annual operating costs for this contract.
So then they'll continue to show up over the next 15 years.
That is correct. Yes, that is correct.
Okay. I move to award a 15-year agreement for software as a service for the new financial ERP software system for city financial applications and other related systems to Precision Task Group Incorporated, an authorized reseller of Workday service, in an amount not to exceed $18,067,068.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Sauer and seconded by Councilmember Smith to approve item 3B. Any questions or need further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, same sign. That passes with the 4-0 vote. Item 3C.
Item 3C is actually for our cashiering system. This one is a 5-year agreement, and this is point of sale. So this is in person, and this is also online. And this is included, again, in the annual operating budgets for your various funds.
Okay. I move to award a 5-year agreement for software as a service for the cashiering system to be part of the new financial ERP software system for city financial applications and other related systems to Can-Am Technologies in an amount not to exceed $566,211.
Second.
It's been moved by Dr. Sauer and seconded by Councilmember Stanley to approve item 3C. Any further discussion or questions about the motion? All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. That passes with a 4-0 vote. Item 3D.
Okay, and item 3D is for Ryan Doyle and his team, Barry Dunn, to do the project management services for the full scope of this project. This is, again, part of the upfront cost. So this was budgeted through capital projects, actually in last fiscal year for water and sewer, drainage, and airport. And then also was part of the tax note issuance for the general fund piece. Will go to pay this portion. So this is the amount that this amount will be paid out over kind of the next 2 to 4 years as we're truly implementing the project.
Okay. I move to award a contract for full project management services for the implementation of the new financial ERP software system for city financial applications and other related systems to Barry Dunn in an amount not to exceed $1,765,000.
Second.
It's been moved by Dr. Sauer and seconded by Councilmember Smith to approve item 3D. Any discussion or questions about that motion? All of those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, same sign. That passes with a 4-0 vote. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Rich, very much. Item 3E is a public hearing and consideration of ordinance number 8022. Mr. City Manager.
All right, Mayor, thank you. We've got Brady Kendrick, Planner 2, to present the item. This is a request for rezoning. Brady.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This is an item that considers the rezoning of the west 125 feet of the east half of Block 267, Hollins Edition, in addition to the city of Amarillo in Potter County, Texas. The change from multiple family District 1 to light commercial district. The vicinity is Wichita Avenue and Muir Street, and the applicants are Marciano and Lucia Arvedondo. Adjacent zoning consists of multiple family District 1 to the west, north, and east, and light industrial district to the south. Adjacent land uses consist of single-family detached homes to the east and north, an apartment complex to the west, and an institutional use, a church, to the south. The applicant is requesting the change in zoning in order to develop the tract with a light commercial land use, new used auto sales lot. This item was considered and unanimously denied by the Planning and Zoning Commission with a 6-0 vote. The applicant has since appealed the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision and is the reason for consideration today. When considering a rezoning request, the Planning and Zoning Commission refers to the future land use map, the neighborhood unit concept of development, and existing development and zoning patterns in the area. The future land use and character map recommends general commercial development types for this particular tract. The applicant's proposed land use and zoning, in the Planning and Zoning Commission's opinion, is at the higher end of the spectrum in terms of the scale and intensity of recommended development types for this tract. Given the surrounding development and zoning patterns adjacent to the applicant's tract, the Planning Commission believes that if approved, the establishment of incompatible zoning districts and/or land uses adjacent to residential areas and development would result and would be contrary to the intent of the development type for this area. The Planning Commission also notes that Northeast 7th Avenue does serve as a dividing line between the industrial zoning to the south and the multifamily zoning to the north, outside of a few exceptions. Future encroachment of commercial zoning north of Northeast 7th could erode the residential neighborhood over time and lead to more incompatible land uses encroaching on residential areas and development. Notices were sent to all property owners within 200 feet regarding the proposed rezoning, and as of this meeting, the Planning Department received one comment regarding the request in the form of a general inquiry. Considering the just mentioned information, the Planning and Zoning Commission believes that the applicant's request would be out of character with the area, would not provide transitional zoning as recommended by the neighborhood unit concept of development, and would not meet the intent of the recommended development types for the given area. The Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend to deny the request with a unanimous 6-0 vote.
Questions for Brady, Council, about this item? Thank you, Brady. At this time, we'll open a public hearing on item 3E. Anyone present who wishes to speak for, on, or against the item may have 3 minutes to do so. Yes, sir. Please come to the microphone and give us your name.
Noah Dawson. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know the parties involved in this. I don't know the property owners. But I would like to speak on just a handful of things. Number one, property rights in theory. Number two, property rights in practice. And number three, this specific instance and the evidence given. Number one.
Is the timer going, Ms. Coggins? Thank you.
Number one, zoning laws such as this, in my mind, are a violation of property rights, which is the core reason why governments exist, is in theory to protect property rights. So this is an affront. Zoning laws just in general are affront to the very purpose of government, in my mind. But unfortunately, basic rights these days seem to not be respected to the height that they should be, and so we need to have actual reasons for supporting these basic rights. And so I move on to my second point, which is that just about every economist worth their salt, regardless of political ideology, will tell you that mixed-use zoning is good. And that is essentially what this tantamounts to. And so I find it pretty laughable that the argument against doing this is tantamount to an argument against what is essentially mixed-use zoning. So the idea that this is changing the character of it, that you're introducing commercial into what is currently residential, is a negative thing. Just from the economics of it is bad policy. And then you need to look at the fact that well, first of all, I'm not a fan of the idea that neighbors should be able to tell another neighbor what they can and can't do with their own property. But still, in this instance, when notice was given to the adjacent landowners, no one objected to the zoning. There was one person who asked for some more clarification about the project, but according to the reports that's in the agenda packet, they didn't say afterwards that they opposed it. They didn't necessarily say that they supported it, but they didn't say that they opposed it, and no one else put forward any comments. So for the reasons that, number one, property rights are rights that should not be violated. Number two, mixed-use zoning, which is essentially what this is moving towards, is a good thing, which any economist will tell you that that's true. Any economist that support their salt, again, regardless of political affiliation. And number three, even though neighbors shouldn't be able to tell their neighbors how to and how not to use their property, none of the neighbors of this piece of property expressed any objections to the proposed use. For those reasons, I urge this council to overturn the findings of the Planning and Zoning Board and to grant this rezoning.
Is there anyone else present who wishes to speak on this item? Hi, sir.
Good afternoon, Council.
Do you mind giving us your name, please, for the record?
Marcelino Alvarado and Marcelino Alvarado.
Sorry, one more time.
Marcelino Alvarado.
Okay.
And my dad, Marcelino Alvarado.
Okay, thank you.
We actually have a petition here that we did with the residents around the area, and we told them our the planning and the what we wanted to do with the land, and we actually have their signs saying that they actually agree with what we were trying to do. We also have a couple of improvements that we want to do. There's been a couple of accidents involving children, since it is like the closest school by. We would also like to help out the community by that. If we get approved, we would like to put a sidewalk on the property along the front side and the sides, as well as like a barrier type, like a poles around the crosswalk areas for the kids, so they could be safer. We would also run like in the environmentally friendly, so we would try to reduce waste of anything that we throw away, or as well as recycle anything that we can. Like since it is going to be a used car dealership, like metal fenders or bumpers, dispose of them properly.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarado. Yes. Any other comments? Does your dad want to make any comments?
Not at all.
Okay. If you don't mind, Council, do we have any questions for Mr. Alvarado?
Yes,
Sure.
ma'am. Can I see your petition, please?
Yeah, I was going to ask for that, and then also, well, go ahead.
Would you like to see it first, ma'am?
Well, I was going to ask Stephanie if she'd make copies so we could all see it at the
Great.
same time.
Here, let's
Thank
go.
you.
We'll go this
Thank
way.
you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Sorry to get in front of you. Since you've said everything you have to say, do we know, is anybody else here from the public that would speak against this? Can I ask that question in advance?
Is there anyone else here who's going to speak on this item? And in a moment, we may have Brady come back and just tell us a little bit about what P&Z was thinking, but.
Yeah, that's what I would really like to know.
Yeah, so I think definitely we'll do that in a minute. But if you've got questions directly for Mr. Alvarado.
I'd like to know a little bit about your plans for your business. So are you planning on building a structure? Is there a structure there? Are you putting up a fence? Will there be parking, paving, lighting? What's your plans there, and what does the existing property consist of?
So the existing property has nothing. It's just an empty, unplanned lot. So we do want to put a metal building, concrete, and lighting.
Okay, so you'll have an office building?
Yes.
And then you'll leave the dirt parking, or you have plans for paving?
So we would pave most of the property, and then there will be some parking.
And then do you have costs associated with this? Do you have a business plan in line?
No.
Are you currently in the automotive business? Are you reselling cars?
Yes, we are. We're currently in the automotive.
Where's your shop at right now?
Right now, our address is 515 Southwest 3rd.
Okay. How long you been in business?
4 years.
4 years. Okay. Yeah, no, thank you. Appreciate the additional info.
Mr. Alvarado, what is it about this piece of property that's important to your business?
It's the area where it's at. It's a well-trafficked area. So it'd bring more business to us.
Is it larger than where you're currently doing your business?
Yes.
Like, compare it in size for us.
I'd say it's about twice as big from where we're currently at.
And you picked it because it's along a high-traffic street mirror?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions, council?
Did you already purchase the property?
Yes.
Okay.
They had to have purchased it in order, do they have to, Brady, in order to come and request the rezoning? Can you do that preemptively before you purchase?
The property owner has to be the one that requests the rezoning.
Okay. Yeah.
So typically, when a business comes wanting a rezoning of property that they don't own, they've got a contingency deal.
In the contract, the sellers, they're applying, yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Alvarado or Mr. Alvarado? Okay, we appreciate y'all being here today. But Brady, I think we might have some questions for you. If y'all don't mind just staying on the front row in case we have more questions, that would be great. We very much appreciate that. Thank you. Brady, can you just tell us a little bit more about the discussion at Planning and Zoning and why they arrived at the decision they did?
Yeah, sure, Mayor. So you got to look at this from a couple different facets, the way the area is developed and also the zoning in the area. I know you have immediately adjacent industrial zoning to the south that contains a institutional land use, a church, but you also have a lot of residential homes in that area, in addition to the homes that are adjacent to the west, east, and north. And I believe that weighed on their decision is how the area is ultimately developed. This is also an area where in many older parts of town, the zoning doesn't necessarily match the way the land is developed. That, yes, it is true, we do have industrial zoning to the south, but a lot of that is developed residentially. So I think they looked at how the land was developed itself in the area. And additionally, outside of a few exceptions, 7th in this area is kind of the dividing line for the most part between a lot of commercial and industrial activity further to the south to what is a majority single-family homes between 7th and the boulevard. Now, you will see that there are a couple tracks north of 7th that are zoned industrially. Those were 2 existing tracks that when the zoning was established in this area initially, they were given a zoning that essentially matched the use, if you will. That light commercial track to the west there, that was done in 2003, the mini storage facility. The biggest I went back and read the notes from the discussions on that, and ultimately the reason that P&Z and council felt that was appropriate was that it was almost serving as a buffer to the industrial land uses and zoning on the west side and south side of that tract. So P&Z felt that this situation was a little different in that you have apartments and residential type development on 3 out of the 4 sides of this tract. So I think those were some of the bigger factors that weighed into their decision on this based on the discussion at P&Z. And they also had concerns that maybe by allowing continued commercial development encroaching north of 7th, over time you may begin to erode the residential character of the property north of 7th. And you could also start running into creating incompatible land uses with the residential development. They didn't necessarily have a problem with the used car lot land use that was proposed. A light commercial district does allow for a wide range of commercial uses, and a few would include truck stops, auto body shops, milk depots. There's a wide range of uses in light commercial district that they were concerned about allowing in that close proximity to the residential development.
Just south to the property, Brady, that block south of 7th Street, are those houses there? It looks like they're platted for residential. Is that, even though it's in?
It's platted that way. Immediately south, you have a vacant church, and you have some houses. And catty corner to the southwest, I believe you have some apartments there as well. And then across the street to the west, you have also apartments as well.
So how is it currently zoned?
Multifamily District 1 is the current zoning.
That's a pretty busy street, too. Very busy street. Kind of an arterial, isn't it?
It functions in a very similar manner, that is correct.
Did P&Z talk about the arterial function of that street?
Traffic discussions really did not come up at P&Z at that meeting.
A little surprising.
Let's check with our P&Z expert. What are you thinking, Mr. Smith?
I like the way that planning and zoning went. 6-0 vote.
And if you were going to verbalize your thinking on that as to why, what would you say?
Well, we've appointed them to dig into the details, and I think they probably did. And they didn't even have a split vote.
And Brady, again, what looks like is on the southeast corner of that block. What is that large structure?
That is a single-family home, actually.
Okay.
I did look into that because it also caught my attention as well, but that's actually a single-family home.
So what's the address of that?
I do not recall of that.
So they actually signed the petition.
I mean,
as far as I can tell, it looks like both houses to the east across the alley signed the petition. A number of houses on the east side of Mirror to the north of the property signed it, and a whole lot of houses to the south across 7th Avenue signed it. The west side, it does not appear that they had any west side signatures on the 600 or the 700, 600, or 500 block of Mirror on the east side. On the west side. But a lot of signatures on the east side.
do you have legal counsel, Mr. Alvarado? Do you have a lawyer here with you today? No. Okay.
Mayor, could I ask if Brady, would you oppose retail in that location?
I think from a staff's perspective, that would be more in line with what the future land use map calls for, that general commercial category. It definitely would cut down on some of the uses that would be of a concern, probably those more light commercial type uses. So I think we still would have some concern about some of the higher end general retail type uses on that tract, given the surrounding development, but we would certainly feel a little better about that than light commercial.
Brady, is there anything that you would say a used car lot wouldn't comply with retail if it was zoned retail?
So if it's zoned retail, an outdoor car lots is not an allowed use in a general retail district, and nor could it be requested with a specific use permit.
So you can't do a specific use permit under a general retail?
For an outdoor car lot. It's not one of the uses identified that you could request a specific use permit for in general retail under the current zoning ordinance.
So therefore, it couldn't be general retail. It
Right,
has to be
and allow,
commercial.
that is correct.
Where are you going with your thinking, Mr. Stanley?
It doesn't lend itself to R1 or R3. Even multifamily right there is not a valid option for what we would see somebody who's going to invest in that property, in my opinion. And so my opinion would be that we have a infill lot that we're trying to encourage development, and we have an entrepreneur here who's trying to grow and improve his city and improve himself, and he's already purchased the lot. And so I myself always side on the side of the property owner being able to do what he would like to with his property, as long as he's not doing detriment to the other properties around him. For a used car lot, I don't see any issues on hours. I don't see any issues on, nuisance, noise, lighting, anything like that. Tends to be a pretty low volume. So traffic and things like that aren't going to be an issue. Parking, people parking on the street, whatever it would be. So though it may not comply with the map, it definitely does fit the neighborhood over there, and I'd be in favor of allowing the appeal.
Mr. Alvarado, have you shown this to, Brady, have you seen this petition?
We have not seen that as of today.
Okay. How out of the ordinary would it be for us to contact these neighbors, verify that they signed this, get their opinion on, and then for us to see a map of where they are, a map of who was notified? Jared, do you want to weigh in on procedurally if that's a bad idea?
Well, Brady, the notifications would have been 200 feet in every direction, right?
That's correct.
So the map of who all has been notified is probably 2 houses to the north, 2 houses to the south, and possibly going across Roberts to the east.
And I will mention in the PowerPoint, the map that we had in the PowerPoint actually has the notification radius on there. The graphically show that.
Yeah, with the circle. Yeah.
Yes, that gray shading, that's correct.
But knowing where these neighbors are off of the petition, whether or not they actually signed it. Procedurally, do we ever do that? Do we ever fact check when somebody does something like that?
We have in the instances of if there's a request that we are looking at the likelihood of a protest, we have gone through a verification check of those signatures and mapping the data out. So we have done them in those instances where we have residents that want to protest a request, but since I've been with the city, we haven't done it for this particular reason, but it's something we would be able to do.
Was Mr. Alvarado present, either one of them, at the P&Z meeting?
They were not.
Okay. Mr. Alvarado, were you notified of that planning and zoning committee meeting, board meeting?
Yes, we weren't here. We were out of town.
You were out of town.
Mayor, if I could. Oh, go ahead, Eddie.
Sorry, yeah.
I have a tendency to agree with Councilmember Stanley on this one. It's the way, I've driven this street before, and I've seen exactly how hard this street gets driven and the kind of traffic that goes on here, and I can't imagine this thing staying in a multifamily or anything. It just seems like the street would be too dangerous for something like that. And for this to be an alternative, I kind of like that alternative. Of course, the only thing that gives me pause is the fact when it goes to light commercial, let's say the Alvarados either leave or close that business and move it someplace else. Now then this piece of property is now zoned light commercial, and I don't know, it's light commercial forever.
That's correct.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
based on, not all the council's input, because they're not on the same page, I did want to say to Dr. Sauer's comment just then about, if they chose to move to a different location or went out of business, then we have light commercial. And somewhat in the middle of a residential to multifamily type area. And I don't know what the timeline would be. Brady could speak to this in detail, I know, but we could go to general retail with an SUP. That would be an option that would allow them to do that. That would not be a light commercial zoning, but would allow. Is that correct, Brady?
So, if we went to general retail, they would not actually be able to request a SUP for a outdoor used car lot. So that would not be an option in this case. Plan development would maybe be an alternative potentially, provided it would meet the plan development criteria that's laid out in the zoning ordinance. But the specific use permit route really isn't an option in this instance, going the general retail.
Can I ask, Brady, what is the worst possible scenario in light commercial? Give me the worst thing that would put a shop up there for you in a couple years.
Sure, in terms of land uses.
Yeah, if they
The loudest, dirtiest,
yeah, tell me the worst one.
ugliest neighbor to be beside.
Right. Auto body shops, those could be pretty loud. Truck stops, that might be a little bit on the extreme end as well. A lot of traffic coming and going. Semis, those can be quite noisy as well. Those are probably two of the more impactful ones. Bars are an allowed use in light commercial as well.
They are.
They are an allowed use. So in terms of your maybe more impactful uses, those are probably the three that immediately come to mind.
So any restaurant is not currently allowed but would be allowed.
Right. Restaurants would be allowed in a light commercial district. Those would be.
So, if a bar went up there and it didn't close till 1 a.m., that's problematic. Okay, thank you, Brady. Is there anyone else who wants to speak? Our public hearing is still open. Okay, at this time, we'll close a public hearing on this matter and entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to allow or repeal the appeal for this item as stated.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Stanley has made the motion and Councilmember Sauer has seconded the motion to
Adopt the ordinance?
not, this would be to acknowledge and reverse the planning and zoning decision to deny the change in zoning.
So in other words, we would be adopting the ordinance, correct? Yes.
I guess that's right.
That's
Thank you, Eddie,
correct.
for walking me through that. Yes.
So in essence, they wanted to deny the ordinance, we would be adopting the ordinance.
Yes.
Do I need to clean that motion up, or is that good enough for record?
If you wouldn't mind, there's some motion language that actually will specifically say the rezoning.
Let me get to
Thank
that.
you, Stephanie.
Smart.
Page 2.
Cole, I've been reading what's in front of me all day.
Okay, so I move to adopt ordinance number 8022 for the rezoning of the west 125 feet, as stated in the rest of this ordinance, number 8022.
Second.
Okay, I have a question with regard to Brady. You mentioned a plan development as a way that would. I have a concern about not what the Alvarados want to use the land for, but whoever comes after them. Like, I have a real concern when you look at this on the map. It is squarely residential in the houses that are located around it on all sides, even though there is a street that's highly trafficked. And so this is more like an arterial corner. I'm very concerned about a bar or even a restaurant that stays open until 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night coming into that land. So what are our options for allowing the use for the current owner's business, but not setting it up as light commercial from here on out?
We could explore the possibility to see if they are qualify for a planned development, because within the zoning ordinance, there's certain criteria that a property has to meet to be eligible for a planned development. That's something we can research and see if they are indeed eligible for that. And with that, we could allow for their land use while also limiting some of those others. Like, for example, we could go with general retail as a base zoning while allowing for a used car lot. That is an option that we have, and we have done on Sonsi Road, for example, with many of those car dealerships. It's just a question of, though, whether or not they're eligible for a planned development in this instance.
So how do we do that?
Well, I'd like to table it. Yeah, I'd like to make, or do we have a motion to table this item while we research that?
Need to go to Cole,
I think a motion to table can come from anybody.
I'll move
It's
to
great if
table.
Cole wants to make it, but
Okay, so in our discussion, see, I wouldn't have asked the question on general retail knowing what you said. So I actually thought general retail did allow for car lots, both new and used, because we see them everywhere in general retail settings. But you're telling me that all of those, all the way down Sonsi, all down I-27, everywhere, are all special, are all planned developments or
The
special?
majority of the ones on Sonsi are. A lot of the ones on I-27, I believe, are in light commercial already, because the majority of the zoning along I-27 is light commercial or heavy commercial. But a majority, if not all, the ones along Sonsi, the newer ones, are in planned developments that utilize general retail as a base zoning while also allowing for that additional use.
Let me say this then. I don't share in the same concern of the light commercial likelihood that a bar or late night activity would take spot on that particular street. However, I do share in my council's due diligence and their willingness to go through the process the appropriate way. And this issue to me doesn't have a timetable on it, and tabling the issue for 2 weeks shouldn't cause anybody any problem while we get our ducks in a row. So I'll amend my motion to move to table until the next meeting.
I'll second it.
okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Stanley, seconded by Councilmember Sauer to table this item until our next city council meeting, which will be on October 18th.
I may, if we're going to be looking at a PD and GR, it would likely need to go back to P&Z. Brady, is that correct? Or can we come straight back to council with it?
Leslie, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we go with a more restrictive zoning district, which this would potentially be, we don't have to re-notify, correct? And go back to P&Z?
I would have to check that.
Okay.
If you can just make it flexible enough to bring it back to council at the earliest opportunity, Councilmember Stanley. It might not be the next council meeting, it might be the one after that. I just didn't want to, if we're required to go to P&Z, then.
So to clarify, my amended motion to table this would be for the next available meeting when we're ready to bring this back as a potential plan development.
So you could make a motion to push it to a future meeting.
Do you mind making that motion?
I do not. I would like to amend my amendment to my motion to push to a future meeting. Ordinance 8022.
And I'll second my second to the second.
Okay, so it's now been moved and seconded to push this item to a future agenda, giving enough time, ample time for it to be researched on other options.
So can I ask some questions?
Sure.
So how likely is this whole scenario to be a possibility for them?
So when it comes to the plan development criteria, there's acreage requirements in addition to some, if you're adjacent to an arterial, for example, that most of the time means you're eligible. So without just knowing every bullet point off the top of my head, I'd hate to incorrectly speak on that, but it would just be a matter of reviewing that criteria amongst staff and then communicating with the applicant. Because there's a acreage criteria, location criteria. There's also certain uses that are eligible for planned developments automatically. So we just need to go through every one of those bullet points outlined in the ordinance and see if it's eligible.
Any other questions?
I'd make a comment that I would go along with that crazy motion that Mr. Stanley just made to explore other ways to accomplish what we're after. But I honestly feel, like I said a while ago, we had 6 people on the planning and zoning look at it, and I wasn't there, but hopefully they considered not only the current situation, but future long-term situations. So I have trouble with doing it. But if there's another way to accomplish it for them, I'm for it.
Okay. With that, all of those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Okay, so it passes with the 4-0 vote that we're going to pause. Okay, we're not going to take action today. So what we're working very hard to do is to help you with this piece of land, but we want to do it with an eye on the future that someday you may sell this land. And if you sell it, we don't want to leave those houses around you subject to somebody who may bring a business that's not as family friendly as your business. And so that's the catch for us. And so what next steps, Mr. City Manager, could you tell Mr. Alvarado and Mr. Alvarado what to expect from this point forward, please?
Right off the bat, staff are going to evaluate what council has asked them to consider, which would be a plan development, which would allow you to do the what your business plan is, but would also ensure that the neighboring properties would be protected from a use that would not be compatible with residential use, like what could come in a light commercial. They will evaluate it, and they'll get back to you right away, real quick.
It's with Brady, their contact?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Brady will be their contact. Is that correct, Brady?
That's correct.
Okay.
And Brady, you know how to get in touch with them? And
Yes, I've been communicating with them, so
Okay.
I have their contact information.
Okay, and Mr. Alvarado, do you have Brady's contact information? Okay, great. So we'll investigate, and y'all will work on that, and then when it needs to come back on a city council agenda, you'll get notified about that too.
I wonder if the applicant's got any questions now.
Yes, Mr. Alvarado, do you have any questions now? No? Okay. Okay, Brady's your contact, but if for some reason you hit a snag and you feel like you need a second contact point, the mayor's office can definitely be a second contact point for you, okay? All right, thank you.
Can I just say, Brady, thank you for working through this deal with us and coming up with some other options so it doesn't have to just be black and white and cut and dried. I really appreciate that very much.
No problem.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Brady, then let's move on to 3F, which is a public hearing and consideration of ordinance number 8023.
This item is to consider rezoning a 5.24 acre tract of unplatted land in section 191, block 2, A&M survey, Potter County, Texas, to change from agricultural district to residential district 3 in the vicinity of Hastings Avenue and Broadway Drive. And the applicant is Tommy Nielsen. Adjacent zoning consists of agricultural district to the north and south, residential district 3 to the west, and also agricultural district to the east. Adjacent land uses consist of undeveloped land in all directions. The applicant is requesting this change to develop the next phase of the Vineyard subdivision with single-family homes. And the Planning and Zoning Commission found that this is in the rural future land use map category. And given the changes in development patterns within this section of land, since the map's adoption primarily being the development of the Vineyard subdivision, they feel that deviating from the future land use map in this instance is warranted. And they also found that the request would conform with the neighborhood unit concept given the location of the applicant's tract. And property owner notices were sent to everybody within 200 feet as required, and no comments were received. And given that information, the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of the request with a unanimous vote.
Any questions for Brady, council? Okay, thank you, Brady. At this time, we'll open a public hearing on agenda item 3F, which is ordinance number 8023. Anyone present who wishes to speak for, on, or against this matter may have 3 minutes to do so. So anyone who wishes to speak on this agenda item? Seeing no one, will close the public hearing and entertain a motion on this item.
Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance number 8023, rezoning of a 5.24 acre tract of unplatted land in section 191, Block 2, A&M survey, Potter County, Texas, plus 1/2 of all bounding streets, alleys, and public ways to change from agricultural district to residential district 3 in the vicinity of Hastings and Broadway.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Sauer, seconded by Councilmember Smith to approve ordinance number 8023. Any further questions or discussion? All of those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, same sign. That passes with the 4-0 vote. Moving on to agenda item 3G.
This item is to consider rezoning a 7.08 acre tract of unplatted land in Section 191, Block 2, A, B&M Survey, Potter County, Texas, plus one half of all bounding streets, alleys, and public ways to change from agricultural district to planned development district 402 for a mini storage facility. The vicinity is also Hastings Avenue and Broadway Drive, and the applicant is Tommy Nelson. The adjacent zoning is agricultural district to the north, south, and west, and residential district 1 to the east. Adjacent land uses consist of undeveloped land to the north and south and west, and single-family detached homes and undeveloped land to the east. The applicant is requesting this change in zoning to develop with a mini storage facility that will follow general retail district-based zoning. The comprehensive plan's future land use map also identify this applicant's tract as the rural category, and given the location of the tract in the vicinity of the section line arterial intersection, the Planning and Zoning Commission felt that the request was appropriate given the changing development patterns in this area since the future land use map's adoption. And regarding the neighborhood unit concept, the Planning Commission believed that given the location in relation to that intersection, the request would conform with the concept. The Planning and Zoning Commission does note that typically light commercial district is the first zoning district that allows for a mini storage facility, and it is noted that in the upcoming zoning ordinance revision project, mini storage facilities will be allowed in general retail district, and felt that this was worth considering with this request as well. And given the location and these changes, they felt that this use is appropriate. And additionally, I will note that this request does qualify for a planned development, given that many storage facilities are one of the uses identified that are eligible. Notices were sent as required and no comments have been received. And given this, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended a approval with a unanimous vote.
Any questions for Brady, Council? Thank you, Brady. At this time, we'll open a public hearing on ordinance number 8024, item 3G. Anyone present who wishes to speak for, on, or against this item may have 3 minutes to do so. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak? Seeing no one, will close the public hearing and entertain a motion on item 3G.
I move to adopt ordinance number 8024, rezoning of a 7.08 acre tract of unplatted land in section 191, block 2, ABNM Survey, Potter County, Texas, plus one half of all bounding streets, alleys, and public ways to change from agricultural district to planned development district 402 for a mini storage facility in the vicinity of Hastings Avenue and Broadway Drive.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Sauer, seconded by Councilmember Smith to approve ordinance number 8024. Any further questions or discussion on the matter? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, same sign. That passes with a 4-0 vote. Item 3H is a public hearing in consideration of ordinance number 8025.
This item is to consider rezoning a 1.509 acre tract of land out of the east portion of Lot 5A, Block 42, Westgate Mall, Unit Number 6, in addition to the City of Amarillo, to change from Planned Development District 359 to Planned Development District 359A to allow for adult daycare as an allowed use. The vicinity is Westgate Parkway and Sauncey Road, and the applicant is Five Jives LLC. Adjacent zoning consists of Planned Development District 346 to the north, Residential District 1 to the south, Planned Development District 108W to the east, and Planned Development District 359 to the west. Adjacent land uses consist of multi-tenant retail buildings to the north, east, and west, and single-family detached homes to the south. The applicant is proposing the change to allow for the addition of an adult daycare as an allowed use within the current planned development that will be contained within an existing building. The Planning and Zoning Commission does note that the future land use map category for this tract is general commercial, and the applicant's proposed use would fit within this category. The current zoning, Planned Development 359, is a part of a series of planned developments for the Westgate Mall and other retail developments within the Westgate Mall complex. The original intent of the PD 108 series was to create a regional shopping center that features the Westgate Mall, and using these planned developments to protect this economic asset to the city. Regarding allowable land uses, general retail development is the categorization of land uses allowed per the applicable planned development documents. This would include uses that are classified as retail and related service uses in the city's zoning ordinance. The applicant's use would be classified under the institutional land use category. While the proposed use in adult daycare would not be allowed under the current plan development, as it is classified as institutional land use, the Planning and Zoning Commission believes that the use, which the Commission notes is allowed in general retail district, would not have any discernible external impacts and would be an appropriate land use in this area. The Commission believed that the current development ordinance standards provide the proper protections necessary to ensure compatibility of development, and also note that future similar requests would also require zoning change, and requests could be assessed for appropriateness on a case-by-case basis. Notices were sent as required, and one comment was received in support of the request. Considering the just mentioned, the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of the request with a unanimous vote.
Any questions for Brady? Thank you, Brady. At this time, we'll open a public hearing on ordinance number 8025, which is item 3H on the agenda. Anyone present who wishes to speak for, on, or against this item may have 3 minutes to do so. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak? Seeing no one, will close the public hearing and entertain a motion on item 3H. 3H.
I move to adopt ordinance number 8025, rezoning 1.509 acre tract of land out of the east portion of Lot 5A, Block 42, Westgate Mall, Unit Number 6, in addition to the City of Amarillo in Section 42, Block 9, BS and F, Survey, Potter and Randall County, Texas.
Second.
Thank you.
It's been moved by Councilmember Sauer and seconded by Councilmember Stanley to approve ordinance number 8025. Any further questions or discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. That passes with the 4-0 vote. Item 3I, with regard to ordinance number 8026.
All right, Mayor, we've got Kevin Carter, President and CEO of Amarillo Economic Development Corporation, to present Reinvestment Zone number 21. Kevin.
Mayor, Council, thanks for having me today. This is a public hearing and first reading of an ordinance to consider designating certain areas of the city as a reinvestment zone. This would be number 21. It would be for commercial and industrial tax abatement. The zone is approximately 30.03 acres in the vicinity of Centerport Boulevard and Folsom Road. It's outlined there in red along Centerport Boulevard. Designating a reinvestment zone is the first step in property tax abatement process under Chapter 312 of the Texas Government Code. Local governments often use tax abatement to attract new industry and commercial enterprises and to encourage the retention and development of existing businesses. This 30.03 acre proposed tract for reinvestment zone number 21 would be for a manufacturing facility that is new to our city.
Questions for Kevin, Council? Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion with regard to item 3I?
Do we have to have a public hearing?
Oh, we do. Thank you. At this time, we will open a public hearing on item 3I, which is ordinance number 8026. Is there anyone, if you're present and you wish to speak on this item, you may have 3 minutes to do so. You can speak for, on, or against the item. Anyone present? Mr. Dawson.
As I'm sure is probably no surprise to this council, my position on tax abatements is that they're essentially government picking winners and losers. So I'm opposed to it for that reason. I've also written several research papers during my undergrad when I was at WT showing that these kind of incentives arrangements are in the end calamitous to city governments and to local economies. It's kind of paradoxical how it works out that way, but it truly is. It ends up not actually helping anyone. Really what ends up happening is you end up seeing city governments doing a race to the bottom of who can give away the most abatements, and the economic analysis that's utilized showing that there will be benefit even after the abatements expire is deeply flawed and based on outdated economic models. And yet city governments such as Amarillo continue to use those kind of analysis to approve these kinds of things. On one other side note, just from a more neutral position, I would request that this council maybe wait on this item. I noticed there was in the presentation an actual map of it. I know that there's a legal description of the area given in the agenda packet, but not everyone can read those kind of legal notices and understand exactly what it means, because it does include quite a bit of technical language, and not everyone has the means to or education to be able to go through that. And just so for the public to be able to understand where exactly this area is, I think it would be helpful to wait until members of the public who have been able to see this map and actually visually know where this is, instead of having to rely on a legal description of the area. That would be very helpful to the public for being able to give more input on this. I know I today am here to speak against it, but I would love for the public, whether they're for or against it, to be able to have a more considered input on this, especially given that this is something that requires a public hearing. So for those reasons, I would urge voting no, or at the very least delaying consideration of this.
Is there anyone else present who wishes to speak on this item? Okay, at this time, we'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion on item 3I.
Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance number 8026, designating certain areas of the city as reinvestment zone number 21 for commercial and industrial tax abatement. The zone is approximately 30.03 acres in the vicinity of Centerport Boulevard and Folsom Road.
Second.
Okay, with that, all of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I guess not. There's only 3 of us. That passes with a 3-0 vote. Yes. Moving on to agenda item J. Mr. City Manager.
All right, Mayor, we've got Jerry Danforth, Director of Facilities, here to present the item. This is for the installation of LED field lighting and park lighting at a number of our sports fields and park facilities. Pretty exciting project that has been very visible over the course of this last budgetary process. So Jerry's going to present to us what we're proposing to do, who the vendor is, and answer any questions we've got. Jerry?
Very good, sir.
We also have Michael Kashuba, Director of Parks and Recreation, here to answer any questions you might have as well.
I'm going to pull Michael up as my backup in case I forget some of these areas. We're excited to bring this forward. This is an award to Musco for the field lighting. As a point of reference, Musco lighting is what's currently on the Hodgetown. So the lighting that you'll see on the new field, the new lighting that you will see on the fields, is very similar to what you see at the current baseball field there at Hodgetown. The scope of this project entails removal of all the old wooden poles, putting in new metal poles, putting in the new LED lighting systems in those areas, as well as retrofitting some of the existing metal light poles with the new LED lighting on those. Lighting up some additional fields, which would be soccer fields at Rick Klein, adding in some additional lighting at the baseball fields. We were very detailed in our specifications, requiring 50 lumens of light on the infields and 30 lumens of light on the outfields. We did some changes as far as the electrical supply systems for all of the fields, taking a look at those and did analysis on those, looking at what upgrades we can do. So those are included in this package as well. Some additional features we added was some pedestals, power pedestals at several of the larger fields to allow for food trucks to come in there and plug in and not have to run generators, so that we could do events there as well during this project. Be happy to answer any questions if you got.
Council, questions? Thank you, Jerry. Do we have a motion with regard to item 3J?
Yes, Mayor. I move to award a contract for the demolition of old lighting systems and installation of new LED field lighting and utility pads for 7 parks and recreation facilities to Musco Sports Lighting, LLC, in the amount of $7,551,372.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Sauer and seconded by Councilmember Smith to approve awarding this contract for youth sports field lighting. Any questions or further discussion on it? Okay. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes with the 4-0 vote. And with that, we come to the end of our agenda that's not executive session agenda. I would ask our Assistant City Attorney to read our dismissal language, please.
Pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, a closed session of the Amarillo City Council was announced on the above date at October 11th, 2022 at 4:00 p.m. under the following authority. Section 551.087, discuss commercial or financial information received from an existing business or a business prospect with which the city is negotiating for the location or retention of a facility or for incentives the city is willing to extend, or financial information submitted by the same.
Thank you. With that, we're adjourned to executive session.